In the stillness of the night, when the world around us begins to quiet and our own thoughts start to drift into softer rhythms, there is something deeply comforting about listening to the stories of the past. Myths, legends, and old histories have a way of settling the mind, of moving us away from the noise of the present and guiding us toward a place where imagination and reflection intertwine. Tonight, our journey carries us back thousands of years into the shadowed valleys and sunlit mountains of ancient Greece, where gods and mortals shared a world filled with wonder, power, and mystery. At the center of this tapestry of myths, one figure looms larger than the rest: Zeus, king of the gods, ruler of the skies, and a being whose presence was as terrifying as it was revered. The mythology of Zeus is far from simple. He was celebrated as a bringer of justice and order, yet feared for his temper and destructive power. He was honored as the protector of hospitality and law, yet known equally for the many deceptions, affairs, and cruelties that filled his stories. To the ancient Greeks, Zeus was not just a god who existed above them. He was a reflection of human nature itself, magnified to divine proportions. His contradictions are what make him so fascinating. He could be noble, wise, and protective, but he could also be impulsive, cruel, and deeply flawed. It is in this tension, this blend of majesty and chaos, that the mythology of Zeus becomes both unsettling and captivating. The tales that surround Zeus are often strange and troubling, and yet they endure because they reveal the way ancient people understood the world. Thunder was not just a rumble in the distance, it was the voice of a god. Lightning was not only a flash of light, but a divine weapon hurled from the sky. Storms were expressions of Zeus' moods, while calm skies reflected his favor. To live in the world of the ancient Greeks was to live in a universe where everything around you was alive with meaning, where every natural force was tied to the will of a deity, and where myths explained the mysteries that science had not yet touched. As we move gently into these stories, it is important to understand that they are not meant to be taken as literal truths, but rather as symbolic reflections of fears, hopes, and the struggles of human life. When the ancients spoke of gods punishing mortals, they were speaking of the consequences of arrogance, pride, or betrayal. When they told of gods granting gifts, they were imagining the blessings that come from wisdom, kindness, or respect for sacred traditions. In this way, myths are not just stories of long ago, but quiet lessons that still resonate, even if only as echoes across the centuries. Our focus tonight is not on rushing through these myths, but on gently walking among them, allowing the stories to unfold in a calm and steady manner. We will explore Zeus' birth, his rise to power, his many roles as ruler of gods and men, and the tangled web of relationships and conflicts that defined his place in Greek mythology. Along the way, we will also reflect on the darker aspects of his character, the actions that disturb us, and the ways in which those unsettling stories reveal truths about ancient culture. This is not a heroic tale told in triumph, nor a sermon meant to inspire fear, but rather a quiet meditation on the contradictions of a god who was both mighty and flawed. As the narration continues, I invite you to let the cadence of the words carry you gently, like a tide pulling you further into a vast ocean of ancient memory. You do not need to remember every detail or keep track of every name. Instead, you can simply allow the images to drift through your mind. Picture the peaks of Mount Olympus crowned in mist, the deep echo of thunder rolling across valleys, and the sight of stars scattered across the night sky, as if they were fragments of some divine tapestry. These are the landscapes where the myths of Zeus were born, and they remain timeless in their beauty and mystery. There is also a quiet strangeness to these stories. To modern ears, the actions of Zeus often seem harsh, even disturbing, and yet they carried lessons and warnings for the people who told them. In a world where survival was uncertain, where storms could destroy crops and famine was never far away, the myths gave form to those fears. By imagining gods who could be vengeful or unjust, the Greeks created stories that mirrored the unpredictability of life itself. Zeus embodied the storm that could destroy, but he also embodied the clear sky that could nourish. He was as contradictory as the natural world he ruled. This introduction, then, serves not only to open the path into Zeus mythology, but also to frame how we should listen to these myths. with calm acceptance that they are stories born of human imagination, shaped by fear and wonder, and preserved because they continue to speak to something deep within us. Whether or not one believes in gods is beside the point. What matters is the way these stories still resonate when told slowly, with reverence for their age and their mystery. And so, as you prepare to follow along, I invite you to rest your thoughts. Allow the world of the Greeks to rise gently around you, as though you are entering a temple where stories are carved into the very stones. The voices of poets, storytellers, and generations of listeners have carried these myths to us. And tonight, those voices are here again, not to demand attention, but to offer quiet company as you drift toward rest. Zeus may be a figure of storms and turmoil, but in the act of retelling his myths, there is a rhythm that soothes. Like the distant rumble of thunder that settles into silence, the stories of Zeus will carry us onward, slowly and calmly, through the vast and sometimes unsettling landscape of mythology. Long before the name of Zeus was spoken across the mountains and valleys of Greece, there were already stories that whispered through the air like old songs carried on the wind. These stories, fragments of memory and imagination, did not belong to any one person. They came from countless voices over countless years, shaped by the needs of the people who told them, and passed down from one generation to the next. The origins of Greek mythology lie in this vast, flowing river of oral tradition, where tales were not written but recited, where the power of memory was as sacred as the gods themselves. To sit by a fire in the stillness of night, to hear a poet or a singer chant verses that reached back into the distant past, was to feel part of something greater than oneself. It was to step into a world where the boundary between human and divine seemed porous, where everything had meaning and where nothing existed by chance. In those earliest days, myths were not regarded as idle entertainment. They were explanations, a way of giving form to mysteries that could not otherwise be understood. Why does the sun rise and fall? Why does the sea rage with storms and then rest in silence? Why do crops sometimes flourish and at other times fail? The answers came not in scientific terms, but in stories of gods and goddesses, of heroes and monsters, of forces that lived within every tree, river, and mountain. To the Greeks, the natural world was alive with personality. Every rock could hold a spirit. Every breeze could carry the breath of a god. Every shadow might conceal something unknown. The mythology that grew from these beliefs was less a single narrative than a living tapestry, woven anew each time it was retold. As centuries passed, these oral traditions began to take shape in poetry. Poets such as Homer and Hesiod, though writing much later, gave structure to what had once been fluid, preserving fragments of a world already ancient. In Hesiod's Theogony, we find a systematic account of the gods' genealogy, a family tree that stretched from the primal forces of chaos to the reign of Zeus upon Olympus. Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, while focused more on heroes, are saturated with the presence of gods who interfere, command, deceive, and protect. But even before these poets gave the myths form, countless nameless storytellers had already kept them alive, passing them along as lullabies, as cautionary tales, as rituals in the flickering firelight of village gatherings. To imagine the origins of Greek mythology, one must picture a society where daily life was tied to the cycles of nature. Farmers prayed to gods for rain or sun. Sailors looked to the stars and called upon deities to protect their voyages. Families offered sacrifices to household spirits, and communities honored festivals to appease powerful divine forces. Myth was not distant. It was everywhere, woven into daily rhythms. It was a language through which the Greeks understood themselves and the universe they inhabited. Just as a storm could sweep suddenly over the hills, so too could a god's presence alter the course of human lives. It is also important to remember that Greek mythology was not born in isolation. The Greeks were part of a larger world of ancient cultures, and their myths carried echoes of older traditions. From Mesopotamia came stories of floods, divine councils, and sky gods. From Egypt came symbols of kingship and divine judgment. The Greeks absorbed, reshaped, and retold these ideas, blending them into something distinct yet deeply connected to the wider Mediterranean imagination. In this way, Their mythology was both local and universal, rooted in the landscapes of Greece, but also tied to timeless questions of existence that all cultures grappled with. The origins of mythology also reflect the human desire to bring order to chaos. The earliest Greek stories often begin with primal forces, chaos, night, Gaia, and others, that represent the raw material of existence. From these, order slowly emerges: earth, sky, sea, mountains, rivers, and finally the gods themselves. This movement from disorder to structure mirrors the human need to explain not only the universe, but also the precarious balance of life. In these stories, one can hear both awe and fear, reverence and dread. The myths were a way of saying, the world is vast, strange, and unpredictable, but through story, it can be understood, if only for a little while. Imagine, for a moment, those early storytellers. Perhaps they sat at the edge of a field after the harvest, or by the shore as waves lapped against the rocks. Their voices would rise and fall with the rhythm of the tale, their listeners leaning close, caught between waking and dreaming. The words did not belong to one voice alone, but to everyone who carried them forward. Each retelling was slightly different, shaped by the teller, the audience, and the moment in which it was spoken. Yet through all these variations, the core of the mythology endured, surviving across centuries until it reached the classical age, when poets and playwrights finally set it down in forms we can still read today. The stories were never meant to be static. They lived because they changed. A god who was once a storm might later be imagined as a ruler on a throne. A hero who triumphed in one region might fail in another. These changes were not contradictions, but the natural evolution of myth in a living culture. The origins of Greek mythology, then, cannot be pinned to a single moment. They belong to countless moments, to the breaths of countless storytellers, to the endless flow of time that carried them forward. As we begin to explore Zeus himself, it is essential to remember this background. He did not appear out of nowhere, nor did his stories exist in isolation. He was shaped by the deep traditions that preceded him, by the primal forces of chaos and creation, by the struggles of the Titans, and by the voices of poets who sought to give meaning to the cosmos. To understand Zeus, one must first understand that he was the product of this vast, shifting river of myth. He was not just a sky god, but a culmination of centuries of imagination, fear, and reverence, standing at the center of a mythological system that had already grown rich and complex long before his name became the greatest among the Olympians. And so, as we leave this gentle introduction to the origins of Greek mythology, we carry with us a sense of the timelessness of these tales. They are ancient, yet still alive. They are strange, yet familiar. They belong to another world, yet they also belong to us, for they speak of what it means to be human in the face of forces greater than ourselves. With this understanding, we can now move toward the story of Zeus' beginnings, his birth and childhood, and the rise of a god who would come to rule the heavens. Before Zeus could rise to his place as ruler of Olympus, there was another generation of beings who held dominion over the cosmos. These were the Titans, the mighty children of earth and sky, whose strength and vastness belonged to a more primal age. To speak of them is to step backward into the twilight of the world, into a time when the universe was still raw, when order had only just begun to take shape, and when the forces of nature were embodied in beings as immense and untamed as the mountains and seas themselves. The Titans were not quite like the gods who came after them. They were older, heavier, bound to the elements of creation itself, and their stories are filled with the weight of something vast and enduring. The story begins with chaos, the yawning void that existed before all else. From this emptiness emerged Gaia, the earth, solid and nurturing, and Uranus, the sky, who stretched endlessly above her. Together, they formed the first great union of heaven and earth, and from their bond were born the Titans. Each Titan represented an aspect of the natural or cosmic order, as though every piece of the universe had been given a face, a name, and a voice. Among them were Oceanus, the endless river encircling the world, Hyperion, the light of the heavens, Themis, the embodiment of law and order, Mnemosyne, memory herself, and Kronos, the youngest yet most ambitious of them all. Uranus, the sky, feared the power of his children. In some versions of the tale, he despised their size and strength, pressing them back into the womb of Gaia, burying them deep within the earth. Gaia groaned under the strain, aching with the weight of her imprisoned children, and in her suffering, she turned to them for help. From her heart, she devised a plan and forged a great sickle of stone. One by one, she urged her children to rise against their father, but only Kronos, bold and calculating, agreed to act. On a night when Uranus descended to Gaia, Kronos lay in wait with the sickle, and with a single terrible stroke, he struck his father down, severing the bond of heaven and earth. From the blood of Uranus spilled upon the ground, new beings were born, the Furies, the giants, and the ash tree nymphs, all destined to play their roles in future tales. From the sea foam that formed around his cast-off essence, Aphrodite would one day rise, the goddess of love emerging from an act of violence and division. Thus began the reign of the Titans. Kronos took his father's place as ruler of the cosmos, and with his sister Rhea at his side, he became the father of a new generation of gods. Yet even as he grasped power, a shadow of fear hung over him. From the lips of Uranus came a curse, that one day Kronos too would be overthrown by his own child, just as he had overthrown his father. Fear gnawed at Kronos, and fear hardened into cruelty. When Rhea bore him children, one after another, he swallowed them whole, imprisoning them within his vast body. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, all of them were consumed, their cries silenced, their future stolen, so that Kronos might cling to his throne. For Rhea, this was torment. She longed to see her children free, to hold them, to nurture them, but she could do nothing against Kronos' hunger and dread. At last, when she carried her sixth child, she could bear it no longer. In secret, she turned to Gaia, who once again offered her guidance. When the child was born, Rhea hid him away in a cave upon the island of Crete, cradled in the heart of the earth, while in his place, she handed Kronos a stone wrapped in swaddling cloth. Kronos, blinded by his terror of prophecy, devoured the stone without question, believing he had secured his power once more. Yet the child, hidden in the dark safety of the cave, lived on. This child was Zeus, destined to grow strong and to challenge the reign of his father. Even in his infancy, the world seemed to conspire to protect Zeus. In some stories, the nymphs tended him, feeding him with honey and the milk of the divine goat Amalthea. In others, the Curetes, armed warriors, clashed their shields together to drown out the sound of his cries, so that Kronos would never hear. In that secret cradle, between the shadows of the earth and the song of hidden guardians, Zeus grew, while his brothers and sisters remained locked in the belly of their father. The cycle of time, once more, moved toward conflict. The tale of the Titans is more than just a story of succession. It is a story of the inevitability of change. Just as Uranus gave way to Kronos, so too would Kronos give way to Zeus. The Greeks understood that power, no matter how firmly held, is never permanent. The generations of gods mirrored the generations of humankind, fathers replaced by sons, the old giving way to the new. It was a reminder that even the most enduring order must eventually shift, that creation is born of both violence and renewal. The Titans themselves, though eventually defeated, were never entirely erased from memory. They lingered in the myths as symbols of an older age, one both darker and grander than the world that came after. Their might was remembered in the vast landscapes they represented, in the oceans, in the stars, in the laws that governed the cosmos. Even as Zeus and the Olympians rose to prominence, the echoes of the Titans remained, like the deep rumble beneath the earth, a reminder of the primal forces that had shaped the beginning of all things. When we pause to reflect on this tale, it carries with it a certain rhythm that mirrors our own lives. The struggle between generations, the fear of being replaced, the desire to hold power even as time moves relentlessly forward. These are not just the concerns of gods, but of human beings. The Greeks told these stories not only to explain the world, but also to understand themselves. The Titans represented the weight of the past, immense and unyielding, while the Olympians symbolized the new order, lighter, more human in their flaws, yet destined to rule. As the story continues, we will see how Zeus, the hidden child, grows into his destiny, how he rises to confront his father, and how the clash between the Titans and the new gods becomes a battle that shakes the very foundations of the cosmos. For now, though, it is enough to let the image of the Titans linger, vast figures born from earth and sky, towering presences in a world still raw and untamed. Their reign heavy with both grandeur and dread. They are the shadows out of which Zeus will emerge, the ancient figures whose fall will mark the dawn of a new divine age. In the quiet darkness of Crete, hidden away from the eyes of a father whose fear and hunger threatened the very life of his child, Zeus was born. The air in the secret cave was cool and still, filled with the scent of earth and the gentle murmurs of those who guarded him. Rhea, his mother, had risked everything to ensure his survival, and now her care, combined with the protection of Gaia, gave Zeus a sanctuary far from the reach of Kronos' devouring grasp. It is in this shadowed beginning that we find the earliest threads of Zeus' story, a life marked from the start by secrecy, danger, and the quiet, patient unfolding of destiny. The cave where Zeus was hidden was not simply a hollow in the rock, but a sanctuary of the natural world itself. Some tales speak of nymphs, radiant beings of forest and spring, who fed him honey and the milk of the divine goat Amalthea, whose horns overflowed with abundance. Others tell of the Curetes, armed warriors who danced and clashed their shields with rhythmic force, masking the cries of the infant god so that his father would never hear. The very mountains seemed to bend toward his protection, and the winds carried whispers of the future across the peaks. In this environment, Zeus grew not only in body but in the subtle awareness of his own power, nurtured by forces both mortal and divine. Even in the earliest stories, there is a sense of destiny woven into his childhood. Though hidden, he was not passive. There are accounts of the infant Zeus displaying a quiet strength, a subtle cunning that hinted at the cleverness he would later need to overthrow his father. In these soft and secreted hours, he became attuned to the rhythms of nature, learning, almost unconsciously, how to listen, how to wait, and how to prepare. The lessons of patience and discretion were his first education, taught not by a tutor, but by circumstance itself, by the constant thread of discovery and the gentle care of those around him. Rhea, too, played her part in shaping Zeus' early life. She whispered to him of the injustice of Kronos, of the theft of his siblings, and of the future in which he would rise to reclaim what had been lost. Her voice, calm and nurturing, became a thread that connected the child to the larger world of gods and mortals alike. Though young and confined to a cave, Zeus absorbed these stories, storing them as a quiet resolve, a sense of purpose that would carry him through the trials to come. It is worth pausing to imagine the scene in this hidden refuge. Imagine a small, dimly lit cavern, the shadows shifting with the flicker of lamps or the glow of fireflies. The air is filled with the gentle hum of life, water dripping from rock, the rustle of leaves outside, the soft breaths of those who watch over him. In this secret cradle, Zeus experiences the vastness of the world even as he is confined within its protective walls. Nature itself becomes a teacher. The rhythm of the night, the cycle of light and darkness, the whisper of wind through the trees, all speak to him of forces larger than himself, of the balance between patience and action, of the necessity of both caution and courage. In this period of growth, the myths remind us that Zeus was not merely a child, but a being who embodied potential and foresight. Unlike his siblings, trapped within Kronos, he had the opportunity to learn from the hidden world around him, to develop the awareness and strategy that would be essential in the conflicts to come. The stories of his infancy are filled with subtle acts of cleverness and quiet triumphs, each a foreshadowing of the power and authority he would later wield. Even as the hidden infant, he was already becoming the figure who would change the cosmos forever. The relationships forged in this secret world were also significant. The nymphs and the Curetes, though not gods themselves, were the caretakers and protectors of the future king. Their presence represents the notion that even the mightiest among us rely on the support, guidance, and loyalty of others. Zeus' early life was not one of isolation, but of careful attention, of shared responsibility, and of learning to trust in the right allies. These lessons, quiet and unseen, became as important as any divine power he would later command. The myths also emphasize the contrast between this hidden life and the chaos outside. Kronos, oblivious to his son's safety, continued to devour the other children, each swallowed whole and trapped within his fear-driven reign. This darkness, both literal and symbolic, forms the backdrop to Zeus' early years. By hiding, by learning, by growing quietly, he stands as a symbol of hope and patience in a world dominated by tyranny and fear. The cave itself becomes a metaphor, a womb of protection and preparation, a space where the seeds of greatness are nurtured away from the immediate dangers of the world. Even as the infant Zeus thrived in secrecy, the inevitability of change lingered. The prophecies spoken by Uranus and feared by Kronos remained a shadow over the passage of time. The child who grew quietly in the hidden cave would one day confront his father, not out of cruelty, but because it was the natural unfolding of destiny. These stories teach, gently but persistently, that the power of patience, preparation, and foresight can overcome even the most seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The myths of Zeus' childhood are, in essence, stories of resilience, cunning, and the quiet strength that precedes action. As he grew, Zeus' character became more defined. He was strong but thoughtful, brave but cautious, and above all, aware of the larger currents of the world. The myths suggest that this awareness, this combination of wisdom and latent power, was cultivated during the years of concealment, nurtured by careful guardianship and the natural rhythms of his hidden environment. These early experiences would shape his decisions, his temperament, and his approach to power once he emerged to confront the cosmos. And so, in this gentle yet profound period of life, Zeus transforms from a hidden infant to a young being ready to fulfill a destiny larger than himself. The cave of Crete, the nurturing presence of the nymphs, the clashing shields of the Curetes, and the whispered words of Rhea all combine to create a cradle not just of life, but of preparation, insight, and latent power. The mythology of his childhood invites us to imagine the quiet moments of growth, the subtle lessons absorbed in stillness, and the patience required before a future king rises to his throne. When we consider the birth and childhood of Zeus, we see more than just a story of survival. We see a narrative that teaches the value of caution, cleverness, and the protection of life even in the face of overwhelming danger. We see the careful preparation that precedes great deeds. And, perhaps most importantly, we witness the beginnings of a God whose contradictions, mercy and cruelty, wisdom and impulsiveness, love and jealousy, are already seated in the formative experiences of his earliest days. As Zeus grew stronger in his hidden sanctuary, the inevitability of fate drew ever closer. The prophecy that had haunted Kronos for so long, that one of his own children would rise against him, was no longer a distant whisper but a living truth, taking shape in the hidden infant who had now come of age. The time would soon arrive when the quiet patience, cunning, and latent power cultivated in the caves of Crete would be called upon, when the careful preparation of years would be tested against the overwhelming might of the Titans. The Titanomachy, the great war between the new gods and the old, was not merely a battle for power. It was the natural unfolding of destiny, a necessary upheaval that would reshape the cosmos. When Zeus finally confronted his father, he did so with both courage and calculation. In the myths, Rhea and Gaia played roles once more, providing him with guidance, knowledge, and sometimes magical assistance. The first act of rebellion was not rash but deliberate. Zeus forced Kronos to disgorge the siblings he had swallowed. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon emerged from the belly of their father, alive and whole, ready to take their place in the struggle that would define the next age of the cosmos. This act, both miraculous and terrifying, set the stage for the titanic conflict to come. The brothers and sisters, reunited after years of captivity, brought with them their own powers and abilities, each one a unique instrument in the orchestra of war. The Titanomachy itself is described in the myths with imagery that is both awe-inspiring and humbling. The battle is said to have lasted 10 years, a span of time in which the very foundations of the earth and sky seemed to tremble. Mountains shook, rivers changed course, and storms of unimaginable force tore across the land. Yet, for all its violence, the story is told with a rhythm that can be heard as a meditative cadence, as if even in chaos there is an underlying order. The clash of the Titans and the Olympians is less a spectacle of cruelty and more a reflection of cosmic necessity, a dramatic dance in which the old must yield to the new, and the forces of change must be acknowledged before the universe can find balance. Allies were gathered carefully, for Zeus understood that he could not triumph alone. The Centimines, the hundred-handed giants, were freed from their long imprisonment by Gaia, their immense strength tipping the scales in favor of the younger gods. The Cyclopes, skilled artisans of the divine, crafted for Zeus the thunderbolt, a weapon that would become the symbol of his authority, a tool of both power and precision. These gifts, born of collaboration and careful strategy, underscore a subtle lesson woven into the mythology. Even a god, no matter how mighty, relies upon alliances, wisdom, and preparation to overcome challenges greater than oneself. The combat of the Titanomachy is described in myth with both terror and reverence. Titans hurled boulders that shattered the earth, and Olympians countered with weapons that crackled like storms in the night sky. Lightning flashed across the heavens, thunder rolled through the valleys, and the wind carried the cries and commands of beings whose powers were beyond human comprehension. Yet the myths invite us to imagine the battle not only in terms of violence, but also as a grand rhythm, a symphony of forces interacting, colliding, and ultimately transforming the world. Even as the fight raged, the underlying message is clear. The cosmos itself moves through cycles of struggle, change, and eventual harmony. Kronos, though mighty and seasoned in his own reign, was ultimately unprepared for the unity and strategy of his children. The Olympians, guided by Zeus' insight and courage, began to gain ground, forcing the Titans to retreat, reconsider, and finally submit. The war is a narrative of inevitability, but it is also a story of growth. The younger gods, through courage, cleverness, and collaboration, prove that strength is not merely a matter of size or experience, but of foresight, determination, and the willingness to embrace change. When the battle concluded, the defeated Titans were cast into Tartarus, a deep and foreboding abyss within the underworld, guarded by the Centimines to ensure they would never rise again. This act, both punitive and necessary, established the boundaries between the generations, marking the definitive transition from the old cosmic order to the reign of the Olympians. It is said that even in their defeat, the Titans remained potent symbols of the primal forces from which the universe had been formed. Their presence, though constrained, is a reminder that the echoes of the past continue to shape the present, that power is never absolute, and that all rulers, divine or mortal, inherit the legacies of those who came before. Yet even as Zeus secured his position, the myths tell us, he did not simply celebrate victory. There is a quiet recognition of the cost of conflict, the destruction, the upheaval, and the immense energy required to reshape the cosmos. These stories, when told slowly and with reflection, carry a meditative quality. They teach that change, though necessary, is never without effort, and that the establishment of order is as much an act of endurance and patience as it is of power. The Titanomachy also solidifies Zeus' role as a leader, not just in strength, but in wisdom. He becomes a god who is capable of discernment, who understands both the necessity of action and the subtlety of strategy. Unlike Kronos, whose actions were driven by fear, Zeus embodies a measured authority, balancing decisiveness with thoughtfulness. This balance, cultivated through experience and foresight, becomes a defining trait throughout his reign and is reflected in the stories that follow, both in his governance of the gods and in his interactions with mortals. As the echoes of the battle fade into myth, one can imagine the quiet aftermath, the trembling of the earth settling, the rivers resuming their courses, and the skies clearing after storms of divine proportion. The world is renewed, and from the chaos of conflict emerges a new order. Zeus stands at the center, not as a tyrant, but as a figure who has earned his place through both courage and cleverness. The myths, in their gentle cadence, invite the listener to consider the rhythms of power and change in their own lives, to see that even the most immense challenges can be met with patience, planning, and the guidance of allies. And so, the Titanomachy is more than a tale of war. It is a story of transformation, growth, and the delicate balance between destruction and creation. It is in these moments, told in calm and reflective tones, that the myths of Zeus reveal their enduring resonance. The struggle of the Titans against the rising Olympians mirrors the cycles of nature, the rise and fall of generations, and the quiet inevitability of destiny fulfilled. In the stillness that follows, we can see not only the triumph of Zeus, but also the enduring echoes of those who came before, the Titans whose presence shaped the foundation of the world and whose legacy persists in the stories that continue to capture our imagination. After the great struggle of the Titanomachy, the dust of battle settled, and the cosmos itself seemed to breathe with relief. The old order, rooted in the might of the Titans, had given way to a new generation, led by Zeus, who now stood as the unchallenged ruler of the gods. But the securing of power was only the beginning. Establishing order on Mount Olympus required not only the assertion of authority, but also the careful balancing of relationships, responsibilities, and the subtle dynamics of the divine world. Zeus, though victorious, understood that ruling was not simply a matter of strength. It required wisdom, discernment, and a deep understanding of the forces he now commanded. Mount Olympus, rising above the clouds like a sanctuary in the sky, became the center of this new divine order. It was a place apart from the mortal world, serene and timeless, yet intimately connected to the lives of humans below. The peaks shimmered with mist, rivers flowed invisibly through its hidden valleys, and the halls were filled with the murmurs of gods and goddesses who had survived the Great War. In this elevated domain, Zeus and his siblings divided the cosmos among themselves, each taking a realm in which they would preside. Poseidon claimed the sea with its ceaseless waves and hidden depths. Hades took the underworld with its shadowed stillness, and Zeus took the sky, the air, and all the heavens above. Though the divisions were clear, the harmony of Olympus depended upon cooperation, trust, and mutual respect, for each god's power was interconnected with the others. The myths describe Olympus not as a palace in the ordinary sense, but as a living, breathing realm of wonder. The halls were said to be made of marble that gleamed like sunlight on water, with pillars that reached higher than the eye could follow, adorned with garlands that never withered. Gardens grew in perpetual bloom, fed by waters that flowed from unseen springs, and animals roamed freely, unbound by fear or hunger. In the center, the throne of Zeus commanded attention, not merely as a seat of authority, but as a symbol of the balance he had achieved. Here, in the quiet majesty of this celestial home, the new rulers began their work of governance, ensuring that both gods and mortals would find their places in the unfolding cosmos. Zeus' rule on Olympus, however, was far from static. The myths remind us that even a god of supreme power must navigate relationships and responsibilities. Hera, his sister and consort, took her place at his side, embodying law, order, and the bonds of marriage among the divine. The other siblings, each powerful in their own right, contributed to the maintenance of the universe, ensuring that storms, rivers, harvests, and seasons followed their proper courses. Together, they formed a council of sorts, a family bound by blood, power, and shared purpose, whose interactions shaped the very fabric of reality. In this way, Olympus was not only a home but a functioning society, a microcosm of order emerging from the chaos that had preceded it. Yet, even amidst the serenity of Olympus, the echoes of conflict remained. The Titans, though imprisoned in Tartarus, were never forgotten, and the memory of the long struggle reminded the Olympians of the precarious nature of power. Zeus, in particular, carried the weight of leadership with a keen awareness that authority must be tempered with vigilance. He learned that ruling wisely required more than force. It required foresight, patience, and the careful management of those around him. These lessons, subtle yet profound, became as integral to his reign as his thunderbolt, his divine strength, or his capacity for awe-inspiring command. Life on Olympus was also marked by rituals, both divine and symbolic. The gods observed ceremonies that honored their own victories, acknowledged the cycles of nature and maintained the harmony of the universe. Festivals of song, feasting, and music echoed through the marble halls, weaving a rhythm of continuity that balanced power with celebration. In the myths, these rituals often included mortal heroes or witnesses, suggesting a connection between Olympus and the world below, a reminder that the gods' actions resonated far beyond their mountain home. Through these practices, order was reinforced, alliances were strengthened, and the divine presence became a stabilizing force in a world still shaped by past upheavals. The establishment of rule on Olympus also allowed for the development of each deity's character and domain. Athena, born fully grown from Zeus' own head, embodied wisdom and strategy, a reflection of the careful planning that had won the Titanomachy. Apollo, god of light and prophecy, and Artemis, goddess of the moon and wilderness, brought the cycles of day and night into alignment with the rhythms of human life. Each god, each domain, became a thread in the fabric of the universe, interconnected yet distinct, contributing to the overall harmony that Zeus now oversaw. In this intricate tapestry, power was not a solitary attribute, but a shared, dynamic network of influence and responsibility. The myths emphasize that establishing rule on Olympus was not an event accomplished in a single moment. It was a process, unfolding gradually, marked by both triumphs and challenges. Zeus, as king, had to navigate disputes, mediate conflicts, and occasionally assert his authority in subtle ways that preserved harmony without unnecessary destruction. These stories, when told slowly and reflectively, reveal a timeless lesson. Leadership is as much about patience, judgment, and understanding as it is about raw power. A ruler, divine or mortal, must balance ambition with restraint, authority with empathy, and decisiveness with foresight. Even as Zeus settled into his role, the myths foreshadow his complex nature. Though he became a figure of justice and order, the stories hint at his impulsiveness, his desire, and his occasional unpredictability. These traits would shape the relationships he formed, the challenges he faced, and the many legends that followed. Olympus, serene and majestic, is thus not simply a static utopia, but a living stage, where the actions of gods ripple outward, influencing both the heavens and the earth. It is a realm of beauty and calm, yet one always poised on the edge of narrative tension, where the deeds of Zeus and his siblings continue to unfold. In imagining Olympus, one can picture a world where clouds swirl gently around high peaks, where sunlight bathes marble halls in golden warmth, and where the distant sound of laughter or song drifts through the air, a quiet echo of both celebration and vigilance. Here, Zeus begins to define himself, not only as a conqueror of the Titans, but as a ruler whose authority must be measured, thoughtful, and enduring. The mountain becomes both home and symbol, a place of safety, a seat of power, and a vantage point from which the universe can be observed and guided. Thus, the establishment of rule on Mount Olympus marks a critical turning point in the mythology of Zeus. The battles of the past have ended, yet the responsibilities of the present demand attention, foresight, and care. Through calm reflection, storytelling, and the gentle cadence of myth, we can sense the weight of authority resting upon him, the harmony of a new order emerging from chaos, and the quiet lessons that this divine family imparts. Olympus is not only a setting for gods and legends. It is a space where the rhythms of life, power, and responsibility converge, teaching us, in soft and subtle ways, about patience, balance, and the careful management of what we hold dear. Zeus, though established as the supreme ruler of Mount Olympus, is far from a simple figure. His mythology is filled with contradictions, complexity, and subtle tensions that make him one of the most compelling figures of ancient Greece. He embodies power, authority, and justice, yet he is also impulsive, driven by desire, and prone to actions that seem at odds with the very order he enforces. These contradictions are not flaws in the myths, but rather reflections of the ancient Greeks' understanding of the world, where power is never purely benevolent, and where even gods are mirrors of human strengths and weaknesses magnified to divine scale. To explore the personality of Zeus is to enter a world where awe and unease exist side by side, where the calm and the storm are always intertwined. At the core of Zeus' personality is his authority. He is the enforcer of cosmic order, the arbiter of justice among gods and mortals alike. His word is final, his decisions swift, and his presence commanding. Mortals prayed to him for fairness, for protection, and for the resolution of disputes, believing that his gaze could penetrate both hearts and intentions. Among the gods, Zeus acts as a mediator, balancing conflicting interests, guiding those under his rule, and ensuring that the intricate order of Olympus is maintained. His authority is absolute, yet it is exercised with subtlety, a combination of strength and judgment that marks him as a ruler not merely of force, but of wisdom. Yet alongside this formidable authority lies an undeniable impulsiveness. The myths are filled with stories of Zeus acting on sudden desire or emotion, sometimes with consequences that ripple far beyond his initial intent. He is drawn to beauty, to charm, and to love in many forms, often pursuing relationships that disrupt both mortal and divine order. These actions, though troubling in their implications, reveal a God who is deeply human in his passions and whims. They remind us that power does not eliminate desire, that even the most elevated being is subject to emotions and impulses that cannot always be contained. In this way, Zeus' personality mirrors the duality of life itself: reason and instinct, planning and spontaneity, order and chaos, all coexisting in a single presence. Justice is another essential aspect of Zeus' character. He is known as the protector of oaths, the enforcer of sacred law, and the guardian of hospitality. To break a promise, to betray a guest, or to act unjustly was to invite his wrath, for Zeus' sense of fairness is both exacting and absolute. Yet, even in this stern aspect of his personality, there is subtlety. The myths suggest that his justice is not rigid. It is tempered by wisdom, by the need to maintain harmony, and by the recognition that every situation is unique. The tension between his mercy and his severity adds depth to his personality, revealing a being who must navigate the delicate balance of authority and empathy. The contradictions of Zeus' personality are perhaps most evident in his interactions with mortals. He can be a protector, offering guidance, favor, and even gifts to those who honor him. Yet he can also be a punisher, bringing storms, misfortune, or calamity to those who defy the natural or moral order. These actions are not arbitrary but are framed in myth as responses to hubris, injustice, or the failure to respect the sacred. In this sense, Zeus embodies the dual nature of divinity: the capacity to nurture and the capacity to destroy, the authority to guide and the force to discipline. His presence is a constant reminder that power, whether divine or human, carries responsibilities and consequences. One of the more subtle aspects of Zeus' personality is his patience. Though he acts decisively when necessary, much of his success derives from waiting, observing, and calculating. The myths suggest that he understands timing, that he knows when to act, and when to allow events to unfold. This patience is particularly evident in his rise to power, from infancy to maturity, and in his governance of Olympus. It is a quiet strength, often overshadowed by the more dramatic episodes of his desires or his wrath, but it is no less essential to his character. Patience, combined with insight, allows him to maintain authority and stability over both gods and mortals, ensuring that the order of the cosmos is preserved. Another element of his personality is cunning. Zeus is not merely a being of raw power. He is a strategist, a thinker who uses intelligence and foresight to achieve his goals. From the overthrow of Kronos to the management of disputes among the gods, Zeus demonstrates a remarkable capacity to anticipate, plan, and manipulate situations to his advantage. This cleverness, far from being deceitful in a negative sense, reflects a necessary skill for leadership. It is a trait that allows him to navigate the complexities of divine society, to balance competing interests, and to respond to challenges that might otherwise threaten the harmony he seeks to maintain. Zeus' relationships with the other gods also illuminate his personality. He is a father, a brother, a husband, and sometimes an adversary. His interactions with Hera, his sister and consort, are marked by both tension and loyalty, revealing the complexities of love, power, and family among the divine. His dealings with Athena, Apollo, and Artemis reflect both guidance and deference, as he recognizes their abilities and respects their domains. Even when conflicts arise, Zeus' responses demonstrate both authority and consideration, underscoring the delicate balance required in ruling a realm as dynamic and diverse as Olympus. Despite his many contradictions, or perhaps because of them, Zeus remains an enduring figure in mythology. His personality embodies the tensions inherent in life itself, the push and pull between strength and restraint, desire and responsibility, order and unpredictability. The myths do not offer a simplistic portrait of a perfect god. Instead, they present a being whose greatness is inseparable from his flaws, whose power is defined as much by character as by force. This complexity invites reflection, a quiet meditation on the nature of authority, justice, and the human, or divine, capacity to navigate a world filled with both beauty and danger. In contemplating Zeus, one might imagine the slow, deliberate movements of a ruler surveying his domain from the heights of Olympus. The clouds drift around him, the sun casts long shadows across marble halls, and the distant rumble of storms hints at both his presence and his power. He is a figure of calm and intensity, capable of sudden action yet measured in judgment, a being whose contradictions make him endlessly fascinating and whose stories continue to captivate. In this serene observation, the myths convey lessons not only about divinity but about balance, reflection, and the subtle forces that govern life itself. Thus, to understand the personality of Zeus is to understand both the majesty and the imperfection inherent in all forms of power. He is simultaneously awe-inspiring and relatable, terrifying and instructive, commanding and flawed. These qualities make him a god who resonates across time, whose myths continue to intrigue, and whose contradictions are as instructive as his triumphs. In the soft cadence of storytelling, his personality emerges not as a series of episodes or deeds, but as a living, breathing presence, inviting the listener to reflect, imagine, and drift into the complexities of divine character while embracing the calm, meditative rhythm of myth. Though Zeus reigned supreme over Mount Olympus, his gaze and influence extended far beyond the marble halls and misted peaks of the god's realm. The mortal world, with its fields, rivers, cities, and villages, existed in delicate balance under his watch. In the myths, Zeus is portrayed as both protector and judge of humanity, a god whose interventions shape the destinies of kings, heroes, and ordinary people alike. His power is invisible yet palpable, felt in the turning of the seasons, the sudden arrival of storms, the fortune or misfortune that visits each life. Mortals revered him not only for his strength, but for his capacity to maintain order, to enforce justice, and to ensure that the rhythms of life flowed according to divine law. Zeus' interactions with mortals often reflect a complex mixture of guidance, reward, and punishment. In some stories, he appears as a benevolent protector, bestowing gifts upon those who demonstrate piety, courage, or wisdom. A king who rules justly, a family who honors the gods, or a hero who strives with courage may find favor in his eyes. These interventions are rarely dramatic or flashy. Rather, they manifest subtly as a shift in circumstance, a sudden insight, or a fortunate event that alters the course of a life. In this way, Zeus is a presence that can be felt rather than always seen, a quiet guardian of the moral and natural order that shapes the experiences of mortals. Yet, the myths also remind us that Zeus' authority carries consequences for those who act unjustly. Mortals who betray trust, violate sacred oaths, or defy the god's laws often find themselves subject to his wrath. Storms may descend upon their homes, crops may fail, or unforeseen disasters may strike, each event a gentle, or sometimes harsh, reminder of the necessity of respect and balance. In these moments, Zeus is neither capricious nor cruel without reason. Rather, he embodies the principle that actions have consequences, and that the moral order of the universe requires vigilance and accountability. Through this lens, the myths serve not only as stories of gods and humans, but also as reflections on ethics, responsibility, and the natural consequences of behavior. In addition to these moral interventions, Zeus is often portrayed as a more direct participant in the lives of mortals, sometimes appearing in disguise to test their character or to guide their choices. He may take the form of a traveler, a stranger, or even an animal, moving unnoticed among humans while observing their deeds and offering opportunities for growth. These encounters are often subtle and instructive, emphasizing the importance of discernment, hospitality, and humility. The presence of a god, even when hidden, reminds mortals that the world is larger and more interconnected than it appears, that every action may carry significance beyond immediate perception. Zeus' relationships with heroes are particularly notable in the myths. Heroes such as Heracles, Perseus, and Jason often receive his favor or protection, yet even they are subject to challenges and trials that test their character, strength, and perseverance. In some accounts, Zeus provides guidance or gifts that enable success, while in others, he allows adversity to shape and refine the hero. This dual role, as both helper and tester, illustrates the depth of his interactions with humanity. Mortals are never passive recipients of divine will. They are active participants in a dialogue with the god, navigating trials that reveal resilience, courage, and ingenuity. The myths also describe Zeus' influence on natural phenomena, linking the divine to the observable world. Rain, storms, and lightning are often seen as expressions of his will, manifestations of his power that affect crops, travel, and the fortunes of communities. Yet these occurrences are not chaotic. They follow a rhythm, a balance that mirrors the order Zeus seeks to maintain. In this way, the natural world itself becomes an instrument of divine interaction, a subtle reminder of the presence of a guiding force, and a reflection of the interconnectedness of gods, humans, and the universe. Despite his supreme authority, Zeus' interactions with mortals are not solely about control or dominance. The myths often depict him as a figure of inspiration and guidance, providing models of courage, justice, and wisdom. Mortals who honor him, who act with integrity, or who seek knowledge can receive insight, protection, and opportunities for growth. In these stories, Zeus is a teacher as well as a ruler, guiding humanity toward understanding and alignment with the principles that sustain both mortal life and cosmic order. These lessons are embedded subtly within the narrative, allowing the listener to drift into contemplation of the rhythms of life, the consequences of choice, and the quiet presence of wisdom in the world. The duality of Zeus' interactions with mortals, both protective and disciplinary, reflects the broader theme of balance in mythology. Just as he governs the heavens and presides over the other gods, he also maintains equilibrium among humans, ensuring that neither chaos nor complacency dominates. The myths portray this balance through stories that mix triumph and challenge, reward and consequence, insight and test. By listening to these tales in the soft cadence of storytelling, one can appreciate the way the myths teach about patience, foresight, and the necessity of both action and reflection. Furthermore, Zeus' influence on mortals extends to culture, law, and the development of society. Kings and rulers often claimed his favor, using his authority as a divine precedent for justice and governance. Temples and sanctuaries were built in his honor, creating spaces where communities could come together in reverence, reflection, and ritual. Through these practices, Zeus' presence became woven into the social fabric, connecting individual lives to the larger order of the world. The myths, in this context, offer both entertainment and moral guidance, blending narrative with reflection on the principles that govern human and divine interaction alike. Through all these stories, one can sense the quiet complexity of Zeus' relationship with humanity. He is neither distant nor entirely immanent. His power can be both seen and felt, experienced in the subtle movements of the world and in the outcomes of choices. His influence is pervasive yet measured, sometimes gentle, sometimes formidable, always reminding mortals of the presence of forces beyond themselves. In the calm of storytelling, one can imagine his gaze sweeping across mountains and rivers, cities and fields, observing with care, adjusting, and responding as needed to maintain the delicate balance that sustains life. Thus, Zeus and mortals are intertwined in a web of influence, guidance, and consequence. The myths show a god who is both mighty and attentive, capable of shaping destinies while allowing space for human choice and growth. They teach that power is intertwined with responsibility, that authority is most enduring when balanced with wisdom, and that the divine and human realms are never entirely separate but constantly in dialogue. In the soft cadence of narrative, these lessons unfold gently, allowing the listener to reflect on the nature of influence, the balance of action and consequence, and the quiet, guiding hand of order that touches even the most distant corners of the mortal world. Zeus' life on Mount Olympus was defined not only by authority and justice, but also by desire, by a relentless curiosity and attraction that drew him toward both gods and mortals alike. The myths are filled with tales of his romantic entanglements, stories that reveal both his irresistible power and the complications that arise when divine desire intersects with the lives of those below. Unlike the mortal loves we often hear of in ordinary life, Zeus' relationships carry consequences that ripple across realms, altering destinies, shaping kingdoms, and occasionally inciting chaos. In the soft cadence of myth, these stories invite reflection on the intertwining of passion, power, and consequence, and on the delicate balance between freedom and responsibility. Zeus' relationships often began with admiration, fascination, or sudden infatuation. The myths describe him noticing the beauty or virtue of a mortal or goddess, and a subtle sense of inevitability follows, as though his attention is a force that cannot be resisted. These encounters sometimes take gentle forms, disguises as a swan, a shower of gold, or even a humble human traveler, allowing him to approach unnoticed, a quiet observer before a decisive act. In other cases, his advances are more direct, marked by a display of the raw authority and charisma that makes him both compelling and formidable. In all variations, these stories reveal the duality of desire. It can inspire, create, and bring joy, yet it can also disrupt, challenge, and reshape lives in ways beyond the immediate control of those involved. The consequences of Zeus' relationships were often profound. Children born of these unions, both mortal and divine, would go on to become heroes, rulers, or influential figures whose fates were intertwined with both the human and divine worlds. Heracles, Perseus, Helen of Troy, and Minos are but a few examples of how Zeus' attentions shaped the course of history and mythology. Each offspring carries a fragment of his essence, a reflection of his power, wit, or charisma, but also, at times, the burdens of conflict, rivalry, and destiny. The myths show that even the smallest interaction with Zeus can ripple outward, changing not only the lives of those directly involved, but the broader tapestry of the world itself. Yet these relationships were rarely without tension or complication. Hera, his sister and consort, embodies the complexities of divine jealousy, loyalty, and the constraints of marriage in the pantheon. Her responses to Zeus' infidelities range from subtle influence to direct intervention, and their dynamic illustrates the delicate balancing act of power, desire, and consequence within the divine family. While some myths focus on humor or dramatic irony, others reflect profound truths about jealousy, rivalry, and the challenge of maintaining order when personal desire clashes with responsibility. In this light, Zeus' romantic entanglements serve as both narrative entertainment and a meditation on the complexities of relationships and power. Zeus' interactions with mortals, often romantic in nature, also highlight the blurred boundaries between the human and divine. Mortals favored or pursued by Zeus frequently experience both elevation and disruption in their lives. A woman who receives his attention might find herself elevated to fame, blessed with extraordinary gifts, or connected to a heroic lineage, yet she might also face danger, jealousy, or societal disruption. These narratives emphasize the delicate interplay between privilege and responsibility, illustrating how divine favor is never without consequence. They remind the listener that every blessing, especially from a powerful source, carries its own challenges, requiring adaptation, resilience, and courage. In some stories, Zeus' pursuits reflect cunning and subtlety rather than brute force. He might approach disguised as a humble figure, testing character, patience, or morality before revealing his true nature. In these narratives, desire becomes intertwined with strategy and foresight, a reflection of Zeus' multifaceted personality. The tales suggest that even in acts driven by impulse, there is an undercurrent of calculation, a recognition that actions, particularly those involving love or attraction, have consequences that extend far beyond the immediate moment. Desire is therefore not only personal but also transformative, shaping destinies in ways both gentle and profound. The myths also explore the themes of transformation and adaptation in Zeus' romantic stories. Mortals and gods alike may be changed, temporarily or permanently, as part of their interactions with him. A mortal might be transformed into a swan, a cow, or even a constellation, illustrating both the magical potential and the unpredictable consequences of divine desire. These transformations, while fantastical, serve a symbolic purpose. They highlight the power imbalance inherent in relationships between mortals and gods, the impossibility of resisting divine will, and the broader implications of passion when it is intertwined with authority. Through these tales, the listener is invited to imagine the transformative power of love and attention, both enriching and disruptive, gentle yet inexorable. Yet, even amidst these complex interactions, the myths often portray humor, lightness, and creativity. Zeus' clever disguises, playful interventions, and unexpected approaches to love create moments of wonder and amusement. The stories unfold with a gentle rhythm, inviting the audience to relax into the narrative while simultaneously reflecting on the interplay of desire, power, and consequence. In this way, the myths serve a dual purpose. They entertain, weaving intricate tales of romance and intrigue, while also providing subtle meditation on the responsibilities that accompany influence and authority. The romantic entanglements of Zeus also highlight the broader dynamics of the pantheon. His actions affect not only the mortals involved but also other gods and goddesses, often reshaping alliances, rivalries, and relationships. The narratives reveal a complex social network where desire and authority intersect, creating both tension and harmony. By observing these stories in the calm cadence of bedtime storytelling, one can appreciate the intricate balance of interactions, the subtle ripple effects of choice, and the delicate equilibrium that Zeus must maintain even while following his impulses. Ultimately, the myths of Zeus' romantic life are reflections on the interplay of power, attraction, and consequence. They reveal a god whose desires are intertwined with his authority, whose actions create both opportunity and challenge, and whose influence extends beyond the personal to the cosmic. The stories, told slowly and reflectively, allow the listener to drift into the world of Olympus, to observe the delicate balances at play, and to consider the ways in which power, desire, and responsibility intersect in both the divine and mortal realms. In these gentle narratives, one finds a meditation not only on love and attraction, but also on foresight, consequence, and the intricate web of relationships that define both myth and life itself. Thus, Zeus' romantic entanglements are not mere episodes of drama. They are lessons in cause and effect, reflections on character, and meditations on the responsibilities inherent in power. They demonstrate that even the mightiest beings are subject to desire, that relationships carry consequences far beyond immediate understanding, and that the exercise of influence requires awareness, care, and, sometimes, subtle cunning. In the calm cadence of storytelling, these myths become not only engaging tales, but also gentle reflections on the complexity of life, the interplay of passion and responsibility, and the enduring resonance of Zeus' multifaceted character. Zeus' children occupy a central place in mythology, serving as extensions of his power, reflections of his personality, and vital agents in the unfolding stories of both gods and mortals. Each offspring carries with them aspects of their father's essence, whether it is courage, wisdom, strength, or cunning, yet each is also distinct, with their own domains, challenges, and narratives. From mortals blessed with heroic destiny to gods who command entire realms, the children of Zeus shape the cosmos in ways both subtle and profound. Their stories reveal not only the influence of their father, but also the intricate dynamics of power, legacy, and the responsibilities that arise from divine parentage. Among the most well-known of Zeus' children is Athena, born fully grown and armored from his forehead. She embodies wisdom, strategy, and careful thought, a reflection of the aspects of Zeus that prize insight and foresight. Athena's birth itself is a narrative of both power and balance, illustrating the connection between father and child, intellect, and authority. She becomes a guiding force among the gods and mortals, offering counsel to heroes and influencing the outcomes of battles and quests. In Athena, one sees a child whose role is not merely supportive but transformative, shaping both divine and human affairs with calm deliberation and strategic precision. Apollo and Artemis, twin children of Zeus, occupy domains that are both complementary and profound. Apollo, god of light, prophecy, and music, brings illumination and foresight to the world, guiding mortals with both literal and metaphorical light. Artemis, goddess of the moon, wilderness, and chastity, embodies independence, protection, and the rhythms of nature. Together, they reflect the duality of balance in Zeus' legacy, the interplay between day and night, action and contemplation, nurture and independence. Their presence underscores the way in which Zeus' offspring carry elements of his power, yet manifest them in forms uniquely their own, influencing the world according to their distinct abilities and roles. Other divine children, such as Hermes and Dionysus, further illustrate the diversity of Zeus' influence. Hermes, messenger of the gods and guide of souls, embodies wit, communication, and cunning, traits inherited from his father but expressed in ways that are uniquely flexible and adaptive. Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and transformation, introduces elements of chaos and renewal, demonstrating the unpredictable and creative aspects of Zeus' nature. Through these children, the myths show that Zeus' essence is multifaceted, extending across the spectrum of traits from intellect and authority to delight and unpredictability. The mortal children of Zeus, often conceived through his romantic entanglements, play equally vital roles in the stories of heroes and human history. Figures such as Heracles, Perseus, and Helen of Troy are not merely famous for their deeds. They serve as living bridges between the divine and human worlds. Heracles, for example, embodies both strength and perseverance, tasked with completing challenges that test the limits of mortal courage. Perseus achieves feats of cleverness and bravery, overcoming monstrous adversaries, while Helen's beauty and presence ignite events that shape kingdoms and history itself. Each child reflects aspects of Zeus' character while navigating the mortal world, illustrating the enduring impact of divine influence on human life and the intricate interplay between fate and personal choice. The myths often emphasize the responsibilities that accompany these roles. Zeus' children, divine or mortal, are tasked not only with personal challenges but with the maintenance of order, the pursuit of justice, and the fulfillment of destiny. They act as agents of change, instruments of both reward and consequence, and embodiments of the principles that govern the universe. Through their actions, the balance between chaos and order, desire and duty, authority and morality is continually explored and expressed. In listening to these stories, one can sense the calm, deliberate rhythm of myth, where each action has significance and each child's role contributes to the larger cosmic narrative. Interactions between Zeus' children and other gods provide further insight into both character and hierarchy. Athena, for example, often mediates conflicts among the gods, displaying wisdom inherited from her father while exercising her own judgment. Apollo and Artemis influence both the natural and human worlds, guiding mortals and affecting the rhythms of life. Hermes communicates messages that preserve order, while Dionysus' interventions reflect the necessity of transformation and renewal. In each instance, the myths depict children who carry forward aspects of Zeus' authority, yet do so in ways that highlight their individuality, the interdependence of powers, and the continuing balance of Olympus. The narratives of Zeus' children also explore themes of legacy and succession. While Zeus reigns as the supreme authority, his offspring represent the future, the continuation of influence and power beyond his immediate presence. Through their deeds, choices, and domains, the myths suggest that authority is both inherited and adapted, passed down yet reshaped according to circumstance and character. This dynamic allows the listener to reflect on the nature of leadership, responsibility, and the ways in which influence extends beyond the individual to touch the lives of others. Each child becomes a node in a network of cause and effect, carrying forward both the blessings and challenges imparted by their father. Even the challenges faced by Zeus' children are instructive. Mortals must navigate the tension between divine favor and mortal limitation. Heroes face trials that test not only strength but morality, and gods must manage their relationships and domains in ways that maintain harmony on Olympus. These narratives are not simply entertaining stories. They offer meditation on the consequences of power, the responsibilities of birthright, and the interplay between destiny and choice. In the gentle cadence of myth, these stories allow the listener to contemplate the quiet rhythms of influence and the subtle shaping of lives by forces both visible and invisible. Finally, the presence of Zeus' children underscores the interconnectedness of all things in mythology. Divine, mortal, natural, and social realms are intertwined, with each child serving as a bridge between domains, a catalyst for action, and a reflection of broader principles. Through them, Zeus' influence continues to resonate across both heaven and earth, shaping events, inspiring courage, and reminding all who listen of the delicate balance of order, power, and consequence. In the calm rhythm of storytelling, one can imagine each child's deeds as part of a greater tapestry, each thread contributing to the enduring legacy of Olympus and the far-reaching influence of its supreme ruler. In contemplating Zeus' children, we see the far-reaching consequences of his authority, the reflection of his multifaceted personality, and the continuation of his legacy across both divine and mortal realms. Each child, in their uniqueness, contributes to the grand story of myth, embodying aspects of power, wisdom, courage, or cunning, while also navigating the responsibilities that come with their lineage. In the gentle, immersive rhythm of these tales, the listener is invited to reflect on the interplay of influence, character, and destiny, and to drift into the timeless cadence of myth, where the presence of Zeus and his children shapes the cosmos with quiet authority and profound effect. Zeus' rule over Olympus was not merely a matter of authority. It was a delicate negotiation of relationships, loyalties, and influence among the gods. Family dynamics in the pantheon are intricate, filled with rivalries, alliances, and moments of cooperation that shape both the divine and mortal worlds. Unlike the mortal families we know, the interactions of the gods are amplified, their conflicts and affections carrying consequences that ripple across the cosmos. Zeus, as the patriarch and king, stands at the center of this network, balancing power, respect, and personal inclination in ways that reveal both his wisdom and the challenges of leadership. Hera, his sister and consort, embodies both loyalty and the tension inherent in divine marriage. She is often portrayed as jealous or vigilant in response to Zeus' infidelities, yet her influence extends far beyond personal grievances. Hera governs aspects of marriage, law, and social order among both gods and mortals, and her interventions are integral to maintaining harmony on Olympus. The relationship between Zeus and Hera is marked by complexity. Moments of affection and cooperation coexist with rivalry and challenge. In observing these stories, one senses the intricate interplay of love, duty, and authority that defines family life among the gods, and the subtle ways in which these dynamics shape the broader universe. The relationships between Zeus and his siblings are similarly nuanced. Poseidon, god of the sea, wields immense power, yet he often relies on Zeus' guidance or mediation to maintain balance among the realms. Hades, ruler of the underworld, maintains a more distant domain, but even he is bound by familial and divine obligations. Demeter, goddess of the harvest, influences the cycles of growth and sustenance, and Hestia, guardian of the hearth, preserves domestic and sacred order. Each sibling possesses unique authority, yet their actions are intertwined with Zeus' overarching role, creating a web of influence that must be carefully managed to preserve equilibrium. Alliances among the gods are not always simple or harmonious. Disputes over influence, territory, or mortal favor can arise, requiring negotiation, compromise, or intervention. Zeus often serves as mediator, balancing competing interests, enforcing oaths, and ensuring that no single conflict destabilizes the order of Olympus or the world below. The myths describe these moments with both drama and subtlety, inviting reflection on the responsibilities of leadership and the importance of diplomacy, even in a realm defined by immense power. In this light, the relationships among gods become a mirror for understanding authority, collaboration, and the delicate balance required to maintain harmony in any complex system. Beyond resolving disputes, Zeus fosters alliances through recognition of talent, guidance, and reward. Athena, Apollo, and Artemis, among others, receive his favor, which allows them to fulfill their roles effectively while reinforcing the structure of Olympus. These alliances are often reciprocal. The children of Zeus carry his influence forward, while their abilities support his governance, creating a dynamic and interdependent network. This interplay highlights a recurring theme in the myths. Power is not merely imposed, but negotiated and shared, and leadership is most enduring when it incorporates wisdom, foresight, and respect for the capabilities of others. The myths also explore moments of tension and testing within the family. Conflicts, whether born of jealousy, rivalry, or miscommunication, provide opportunities for growth, negotiation, and demonstration of character. Zeus' responses to these challenges reveal both patience and decisiveness. He can act with restraint when subtle guidance is required, or intervene decisively to prevent imbalance or injustice. These stories, told with gentle cadence, invite the listener to consider the rhythms of interaction, the importance of timing and judgment, and the ways in which conflicts can be resolved through insight rather than brute force alone. Even in moments of harmony, the myths emphasize the active engagement required to sustain relationships on Olympus. Feasts, councils, and ceremonial gatherings serve not merely as rituals, but as means of reinforcing bonds, clarifying responsibilities, and maintaining awareness of shared objectives. Music, poetry, and storytelling within these contexts strengthen connections, inspire reflection, and create a rhythm of communal life that stabilizes the divine society. Zeus, as both king and participant, ensures that these practices support both order and creativity, balancing authority with collaboration and oversight with respect for autonomy. The interplay between authority and intimacy in Zeus' family is particularly striking. He embodies power, yet he must temper it with understanding, negotiation, and subtlety. The myths highlight both the gravity of his role and the personal dimension of his relationships, revealing a god who is both formidable and relational, commanding yet attentive. These dualities echo the broader patterns of mythology, where narratives are designed to convey lessons about responsibility, influence, and the management of complex systems, whether divine or mortal. The stories of Zeus and his divine family also illuminate broader principles of governance. Leadership is not a solitary exercise. It requires awareness of others, negotiation, and the cultivation of loyalty and respect. Power is most effective when balanced with patience, insight, and the ability to foresee consequences. In the myths, the familial dynamics of Olympus serve as both narrative entertainment and gentle meditation on these principles, offering subtle guidance on the practice of leadership, the management of relationships, and the maintenance of order in any realm. Finally, the relationships within Zeus' family demonstrate the ongoing tension between personal desire and collective responsibility. Moments of jealousy, rivalry, affection, or cooperation reveal a constant negotiation between individual impulses and the needs of the wider order. Zeus' navigation of these dynamics underscores his wisdom and his recognition that leadership is as much about listening, adapting, and balancing as it is about enforcing authority. In the calm rhythm of these stories, one can imagine the gentle hum of life on Olympus, the soft exchanges of guidance and advice, the occasional clash of wills, and the enduring bonds that sustain both family and cosmos. In reflecting on Zeus and the gods, one sees a system of interdependence, negotiation, and careful balance. Authority is tempered by relationships, power is exercised with foresight, and influence is maintained through a combination of guidance, collaboration, and occasional intervention. The myths invite the listener to consider not only the grandeur of Olympus, but also the subtleties of leadership, the complexities of family, and the gentle rhythms that sustain both life and order. In the soft cadence of storytelling, the dynamics of Zeus and his divine family become a meditation on harmony, responsibility, and the interplay between power and connection, offering both relaxation and reflection as the mind drifts into mythic contemplation. Even as Zeus presided over Olympus with authority and wisdom, the divine realm was far from a place of complete harmony. Conflicts and rivalries among the gods were natural, inevitable manifestations of power, pride, and differing interests. The myths reveal that Olympus, though serene in appearance, was a dynamic world of negotiations, subtle tensions, and occasional clashes. Zeus, as king, was both mediator and participant, navigating these relationships with a blend of strategy, patience, and decisiveness. His ability to manage conflict reflects not only his power, but his insight into the delicate balance required to maintain order among beings as formidable as the gods themselves. One recurring theme in the myths is the tension between Zeus and Poseidon. Though siblings, each ruling a separate domain, the sky and the sea, their spheres of influence often intersect, leading to disputes over territory, power, or recognition. Poseidon's tempestuous nature contrasts with Zeus' measured authority, and their interactions are sometimes marked by stormy confrontations, subtle challenges, or displays of strength. The myths suggest that Zeus' ability to navigate this rivalry is rooted in both diplomacy and the threat of force, demonstrating that leadership among the divine requires a combination of respect, strategy, and the capacity to assert dominance when necessary. Hades, ruler of the underworld, represents a more distant but equally complex relationship. Though his realm lies below, he remains integral to the balance of the cosmos, and Zeus must consider the implications of actions that affect life and death. Disagreements arise over the treatment of souls, the distribution of power, or intervention in mortal affairs, and these conflicts highlight the necessity of negotiation and understanding. Hades' quiet persistence and Hades' separation from Olympus create a tension that is subtle yet profound, reminding the listener that even powerful rulers must account for perspectives beyond their immediate reach. Rivalries also emerge among the younger generation of gods. Athena's wisdom, Apollo's foresight, and Artemis' independence sometimes lead to subtle disputes over influence, recognition, or interpretation of divine law. Dionysus' unpredictable nature introduces further complexity, as his actions challenge norms, provoke discussion, or create unforeseen consequences. In these stories, Zeus' role is often that of the stabilizer, guiding resolution while allowing individual personalities to express themselves. The myths suggest that conflict is not inherently destructive. It can reveal character, test judgment, and ultimately strengthen bonds when managed with insight and patience. Another dimension of divine conflict involves morality and justice. Zeus is often depicted as enforcing ethical principles, intervening when a god acts unjustly, or mediating disputes that threaten cosmic balance. These interventions are measured, reflecting both his authority and his understanding of the broader consequences of action. A god acting rashly may face subtle reprimand or direct confrontation, and the myths describe these moments with careful attention to cause and effect. Zeus' handling of such situations demonstrates that leadership is as much about foresight, discernment, and the careful calibration of response as it is about power alone. The myths also emphasize the role of reputation and honor in divine conflicts. Gods are conscious of their standing among peers, and slight slights or perceived injustices can provoke tension. Zeus, with his commanding presence and strategic insight, maintains both authority and respect by balancing firmness with fairness. He is capable of issuing warnings, negotiating resolutions, and occasionally demonstrating strength, always aware that the perception of authority can be as critical as authority itself. In listening to these stories, one can appreciate the subtle interplay of influence, pride, and diplomacy, a reflection of the timeless challenges of leadership and social balance. Sometimes, the conflicts among gods extend to the mortal realm, creating indirect consequences that affect kingdoms, heroes, and ordinary people. The myths illustrate moments when disagreements on Olympus ripple down to earth, influencing events, altering outcomes, or setting the stage for heroic trials. Zeus' interventions are therefore both protective and corrective, ensuring that mortal and divine actions remain aligned with the overarching balance of the cosmos. The stories convey a gentle lesson. Even in conflict, the guidance and oversight of a wise leader can prevent chaos and transform tension into constructive resolution. In some accounts, rivalry among the gods is depicted with humor or irony. Competitive challenges, clever tricks, or playful contests allow Zeus to assert his authority while maintaining the cohesion of Olympus. These lighter narratives contrast with moments of tension, offering balance and perspective, and providing the listener with both entertainment and reflection. In these stories, even conflict becomes a rhythm, a pattern of interaction that reinforces hierarchy, clarifies roles, and preserves harmony. The myths suggest that leadership involves both seriousness and levity, and that the skillful navigation of conflict is an art as well as a necessity. The narratives also explore Zeus' personal growth through these rivalries. He learns when to act decisively, when to wait, and when to rely on negotiation. These stories reveal the subtle wisdom required to maintain both power and relationships, highlighting patience, perception, and adaptability. Conflict becomes a medium through which he refines his understanding of authority, justice, and balance, illustrating that even supreme rulers benefit from reflection and careful observation. In the calm cadence of storytelling, these lessons are absorbed gently, like whispers of insight woven into myth. Ultimately, Zeus' conflicts and rivalries among the gods highlight the complexity of power, relationships, and responsibility. Olympus is a dynamic realm, not a static utopia, and the careful management of disputes ensures that order persists amidst individuality, ambition, and personality. The myths invite the listener to observe these interactions with curiosity and calm, reflecting on the ways that authority is exercised, challenged, and maintained. They reveal a world where even the most powerful beings must navigate nuance, adapt to circumstance, and balance competing interests with patience and foresight. In imagining these divine rivalries, one can picture Olympus as a living, breathing society. Clouds drifting past towering marble halls, the murmur of counsel and negotiation echoing through chambers, and subtle gestures, words, or glances shaping the outcomes of disputes. Zeus stands at the center, a figure of both power and perception, guiding resolution, maintaining balance, and ensuring that the intricate harmony of the pantheon endures. Conflict, in this context, is not chaotic but essential, a mechanism through which character, wisdom, and order are tested, refined, and reinforced. Thus, the myths of Zeus' conflicts and rivalries among the gods become gentle lessons in leadership, negotiation, and the careful management of relationships. They teach that even immense power requires subtlety, patience, and foresight, and that harmony is achieved not through suppression, but through understanding, mediation, and the skillful balancing of competing forces. In the calm, immersive rhythm of storytelling, these narratives unfold like a meditation on authority, responsibility, and the enduring complexities of life, divine and mortal alike. Zeus' presence in mythology is ubiquitous, weaving through countless stories that shape both the divine and mortal worlds. From the grand narratives of creation to the intimate tales of heroes and mortals, he is a figure whose influence touches every corner of the cosmos. To understand Zeus is to follow a thread that connects battles, quests, divine councils, and the rise and fall of civilizations. In each myth, his actions are both consequential and instructive, illustrating principles of power, justice, and the subtle interplay between fate and choice. Listening to these stories in a calm, reflective rhythm allows the mind to absorb the intricacies of myth while drifting into the gentle cadence of narrative. One of the most foundational stories is the overthrow of Kronos, Zeus' father, which established him as ruler of Olympus. Kronos had devoured his children out of fear of being overthrown, a cycle of power and paranoia that threatened the cosmos itself. Zeus' survival, hidden by his mother Rhea, and his eventual rebellion against Kronos represent themes of strategy, patience, and righteous assertion of authority. With the help of his siblings and allies, he led a revolution that not only secured his rule, but established the order of the divine pantheon. This myth is often recounted with reverent calm, emphasizing the inevitability of justice, the wisdom of timing, and the strength inherent in both courage and foresight. Zeus' involvement in the Titanomachy, the epic war against the Titans, further illustrates his role as both strategist and warrior. The narrative portrays a cosmos in turmoil, where alliances, betrayal, and raw power intersect. Zeus, guiding both gods and mortals indirectly, demonstrates leadership through careful planning, judicious use of force, and the ability to inspire loyalty. This story is not merely about victory, but about the establishment of order, the affirmation of divine law, and the creation of a stable hierarchy that will govern both heaven and earth. It is in these tales that the listener begins to sense the rhythmic ebb and flow of myth, the rise and fall of forces, and the calm authority that underpins even the most dramatic events. Beyond these cosmic narratives, Zeus' influence extends deeply into mortal affairs, shaping legendary figures and pivotal events. In the story of Heracles, for example, Zeus' role is both biological and symbolic. Heracles inherits strength, resilience, and courage from his father, but he also must navigate trials that test his character, morality, and endurance. Zeus' guidance, sometimes direct and sometimes subtle, ensures that the hero fulfills his destiny while preserving the balance between divine influence and human effort. These myths underscore a recurring principle. Power is most effective when exercised in harmony with wisdom, foresight, and respect for the agency of others. Zeus also appears in the narratives surrounding Perseus, whose journey to defeat the Gorgon Medusa and rescue Andromeda is shaped by divine assistance and oversight. Zeus' subtle interventions provide tools, protection, or insight that guide Perseus' path. The myths often highlight the quiet but potent presence of the god, whose influence is felt in opportunities, timing, and circumstances rather than in overt interference. In this way, the stories illustrate a theme central to Greek mythology, that destiny and free will are intertwined, with divine guidance offering support without completely removing the challenges of life. The Trojan myths, particularly those leading to the events of the Iliad, further demonstrate Zeus' multifaceted role. As the supreme arbiter, he oversees the fates of mortals and gods alike, balancing the desires, conflicts, and interventions of multiple parties. His decisions often reflect a mixture of justice, foresight, and subtle manipulation, ensuring that outcomes align with both cosmic order and narrative inevitability. Zeus' presence in these stories is calming yet authoritative, a reminder that even in the chaos of war and human passion, a higher order governs the unfolding events. Zeus' involvement in the myth of Pandora and the opening of the jar, releasing evils into the world, reflects a different dimension of his influence. Here, he demonstrates authority and consequence, shaping the human experience through acts that teach caution, responsibility, and the understanding of limits. The story balances curiosity's reward and danger, and the subtle guidance of the divine hand, offering moral and philosophical reflection alongside narrative enjoyment. In bedtime-style storytelling, these myths flow gently, allowing the mind to absorb both wonder and meaning. Other myths emphasize Zeus' role in ensuring justice and maintaining moral order. The story of Lycaon, who attempted to test Zeus' omniscience, reveals the god's capacity for both patience and decisive action. When mortals act with hubris or cruelty, Zeus intervenes not arbitrarily, but in alignment with principles of justice and cosmic balance. These interventions highlight his dual role as protector and enforcer, a god whose power safeguards order while also teaching the consequences of arrogance and wrongdoing. Zeus' interactions with other gods and myths, such as disputes with Hera, guidance of Athena, or alliances with Hermes and Apollo, illustrate his skill in negotiation, strategy, and influence. These stories reinforce themes of collaboration, hierarchy, and the maintenance of harmony even amidst rivalry. Through these narratives, the listener is invited to appreciate not only the grandeur of divine action, but also the subtler lessons about leadership, foresight, and the careful orchestration of complex relationships. In reflecting on Zeus' role across major myths, one can see a unifying principle. His presence is both central and nuanced. He is at once a warrior and mediator, a father and enforcer, a figure of authority whose influence permeates the cosmos without overwhelming the free will of mortals. His stories illustrate the rhythms of power, the interplay of choice and fate, and the subtle balance between action and consequence. In the gentle cadence of bedtime-style narration, these narratives invite the listener to drift into the patterns of myth, to absorb lessons quietly, and to imagine the vast, interconnected web of events that shape both heaven and earth. Ultimately, Zeus' role in major myths and legends is not defined solely by individual deeds, but by his consistent presence as a stabilizing force, an arbiter of order, and a guide for both gods and mortals. Whether orchestrating cosmic events, overseeing heroic quests, or influencing human destinies, he embodies a blend of authority, wisdom, and subtle intervention that ensures the continuity of narrative and the balance of the universe. The myths, when told with calm reflection, allow the audience to journey alongside these stories, to feel the weight and reach of Zeus' presence, and to experience the quiet majesty of a god whose influence extends across both the divine and mortal realms. Through these legends, the listener can sense the steady hand of Zeus guiding the intricate weave of events, the gentle pulse of fate and choice, and the enduring rhythm of myth that echoes through time. In the soft unfolding of each tale, there is a meditation on authority, responsibility, and the profound impact of a singular presence, revealing the layers of narrative, power, and reflection that make Zeus one of the most enduring figures in mythology. Zeus, as the king of gods, is represented in mythology through a variety of symbols, each carrying deep meaning and reflecting different aspects of his power, authority, and character. These symbols are not merely decorative or artistic. They are imbued with significance, offering insight into how the ancient Greeks perceived the divine and how they sought to understand the balance between power, justice, and the natural world. In the soft cadence of storytelling, these symbols unfold gently, allowing the listener to absorb their resonance while drifting into contemplation of both myth and meaning. One of the most recognizable symbols of Zeus is the thunderbolt, a potent emblem of his authority and capacity to enforce order. The thunderbolt represents both destructive power and protective force, an instrument through which he maintains cosmic balance and asserts his supremacy over gods and mortals alike. In myths, the thunderbolt is rarely wielded carelessly. It strikes in moments of justice, retribution, or the assertion of rightful authority. Its imagery evokes the suddenness and inevitability of divine intervention, a reminder that even the most powerful beings are subject to principles greater than themselves. The thunderbolt's crackling energy mirrors the latent power of Zeus, present whether visibly expressed or quietly observed, creating a sense of awe and reflection in those who hear these stories. The eagle is another symbol intimately associated with Zeus, representing strength, vision, and sovereignty. Often depicted perched near the god or carrying his messages, the eagle embodies qualities of insight and perspective, soaring above the world to observe the unfolding of events. It serves as a reminder that Zeus' authority is both encompassing and discerning, extending over heaven, earth, and the affairs of gods and mortals alike. The eagle's flight conveys freedom tempered by purpose, its sharp gaze a reflection of the god's attentiveness to justice, morality, and balance. In bedtime-style storytelling, the image of the eagle can drift gently through the imagination, a soaring presence that mirrors the calm vigilance of Zeus himself. The oak tree, sacred to Zeus, represents endurance, stability, and connection between the heavens and the earth. Its roots anchor it firmly in the soil, while its branches reach skyward, symbolizing the integration of divine authority with the natural world. Temples, oracles, and sacred groves dedicated to Zeus often featured ancient oaks, creating spaces where mortals could commune with the divine, reflect on their actions, and seek guidance. The oak's enduring presence evokes continuity and the slow unfolding of wisdom, a visual and symbolic reminder of Zeus' stability and the constancy of his oversight. In the quiet cadence of myth, one can imagine the rustling leaves of an ancient oak, a gentle whisper of divine presence that fosters reflection and calm. Other symbols associated with Zeus, such as the scepter, throne, and royal robe, reinforce his role as ruler of the cosmos. The scepter signifies authority and governance, a tangible expression of his right to maintain order among gods and mortals. The throne represents the seat of judgment, deliberation, and decision-making, a place from which wisdom and power emanate. Together, these symbols convey the structured and deliberate exercise of authority, highlighting that Zeus' power is not merely forceful but considered, measured, and aligned with the principles of justice and cosmic balance. These images, when visualized in storytelling, create a sense of calm strength, an understanding that true power is both guiding and protective rather than arbitrary or capricious. Zeus is also represented through artistic and natural imagery, including lightning in the sky, majestic clouds, and storms that sweep across the land. These natural phenomena are symbolic extensions of his presence, illustrating his ability to influence the world directly and indirectly. Lightning, like the thunderbolt, conveys power and authority, while clouds and storms evoke both protection and transformation, shaping the environment and reminding mortals of the interconnectedness of nature and divinity. Through these representations, the myths illustrate a god who is both omnipresent and intimately involved in the world, a force that can be felt as well as seen, offering guidance, warning, and inspiration. Animal companions, beyond the eagle, also carry symbolic significance. Bulls, often associated with strength and fertility, emphasize Zeus' vitality and generative power, while other creatures linked to him reflect attributes such as courage, swiftness, and vigilance. These associations enrich the narratives, providing layers of meaning that extend beyond the literal, creating imagery that is both visual and contemplative. In the soft cadence of storytelling, the presence of these symbols invites reflection on strength, responsibility, and the harmony between power and restraint. In addition to tangible symbols, Zeus representations are often moral and ethical in nature. Myths emphasize qualities such as justice, wisdom, protection, and oversight, and these are reflected in both narrative and iconography. The stories teach listeners to recognize the principles underlying power, to appreciate the balance between authority and responsibility, and to contemplate the rhythms of consequence, choice, and guidance. Symbolism in mythology, therefore, serves as a gentle conduit for reflection, allowing the mind to wander through layers of meaning while remaining anchored in narrative. Through these various symbols and representations, one can perceive Zeus as a multidimensional figure whose presence is manifested in the sky, in animals, in trees, and in objects of authority. Each symbol conveys aspects of his character, offering insight into the nature of divine power and the ways it interacts with the world. In bedtime-style storytelling, these images unfold like gentle visions, fostering calm, reflection, and a sense of connection between listener, myth, and the broader rhythms of the cosmos. Ultimately, the symbols of Zeus are more than mere artistic devices. They are reflections of his authority, character, and influence. They convey strength tempered by wisdom, vigilance balanced with patience, and power aligned with justice. In the quiet cadence of narrative, one can imagine the lightning flashing, the eagle soaring, and the ancient oak standing steadfast, each symbol a reminder of Zeus' enduring presence, his guidance, and his quiet yet pervasive impact on the divine and mortal worlds alike. Through these reflections, the listener drifts gently into the layered and immersive world of mythology, understanding that every symbol is a thread in the intricate tapestry of story, meaning, and cosmic balance. Zeus' authority extends far beyond his thunderbolts and eagle companions. It is a moral and symbolic presence that resonates through the myths. He embodies principles of justice, balance, and responsibility, serving as a guide not only for gods, but for mortals whose lives intersect with his influence. His stories are not merely about power or conquest. They are meditations on how authority should be exercised, how responsibility must be balanced with compassion, and how foresight can prevent chaos. In the quiet rhythm of bedtime storytelling, these lessons unfold gently, inviting reflection on both personal and cosmic scales. Central to understanding Zeus' moral lessons is his role as enforcer of justice. The myths repeatedly illustrate his intervention when hubris, cruelty, or deceit threatens order. Mortals and gods alike are held accountable for their actions, and Zeus' decisions often carry consequences that are measured, appropriate, and illustrative. From punishing those who overstep boundaries to rewarding those who demonstrate wisdom or courage, Zeus' actions underscore the importance of ethical behavior and the principle that power is most effective when exercised with fairness and foresight. In hearing these stories, listeners can feel the quiet rhythm of justice unfolding, a soft reminder of cause, effect, and the subtle order underlying the universe. The stories of Lycaon, Niobe, and other mortals who test or challenge Zeus illustrate the delicate balance between divine authority and human ambition. Lycaon's attempt to deceive Zeus results in severe punishment, a lesson in humility and the recognition of limits. Niobe's pride and defiance lead to the loss of her children, demonstrating the consequences of arrogance and the necessity of respect toward higher powers. These narratives, though dramatic in content, are told with a calm cadence in bedtime storytelling, allowing the listener to absorb the principles without the intensity of fear, instead fostering reflection on responsibility, respect, and the proper use of talent and influence. Zeus' symbolic authority is also evident in his mediation of disputes, both among gods and between mortals. He is a figure of balance, weighing perspectives, ensuring fairness, and maintaining harmony across realms. His ability to arbitrate disagreements teaches the value of patience, discernment, and careful observation. The myths depict him as a ruler who listens, considers consequences, and acts decisively only when necessary, offering a model for leadership that combines strength with empathy, decisiveness with understanding. In bedtime-style narration, this aspect of Zeus' character is presented as a gentle, reflective presence, reinforcing the importance of thoughtful guidance in complex situations. Beyond enforcement and mediation, Zeus' stories offer lessons in the consequences of choice and the responsibilities inherent in action. Heroes like Perseus and Heracles are guided by divine influence, yet must navigate their own paths, learning courage, resilience, and moral discernment. Zeus' role is subtle, sometimes intervening directly and at other times allowing natural consequences to unfold. This duality emphasizes the principle that guidance does not eliminate responsibility. Rather, it complements free will, illustrating the interconnectedness of choice, consequence, and moral awareness. In this way, the myths provide both entertainment and gentle meditation, creating a rhythm of story that is relaxing yet intellectually engaging. Another moral lesson embedded in Zeus' authority is the balance between power and restraint. While he wields immense strength, he does not act impulsively or capriciously. The myths highlight the thoughtful consideration behind his interventions, whether in punishing wrongdoers, guiding heroes, or resolving divine disputes. This aspect of his character teaches that authority is most effective when tempered by wisdom, patience, and an awareness of long-term consequences. In the calm cadence of storytelling, listeners can appreciate the measured pace of Zeus' decisions, reflecting on the application of power in their own lives, and the quiet importance of foresight and prudence. Zeus also embodies moral lessons about leadership and responsibility within the family of gods. His interactions with Hera, Poseidon, Athena, and other divine figures illustrate the necessity of balancing personal desire, relational dynamics, and collective welfare. Conflicts, reconciliations, and collaborative efforts on Olympus demonstrate that authority is relational, dependent on negotiation, understanding, and respect. The myths provide a model for managing complex networks, emphasizing that moral authority is sustained not by fear alone, but by fairness, consistency, and the ability to harmonize competing interests. These lessons resonate softly in bedtime storytelling, offering reflection without urgency and inviting contemplation of leadership in broader contexts. The myths also explore the consequences of hubris and disrespect toward divine authority. Mortals who act with arrogance or defiance, thinking themselves equal to Zeus, are often met with lessons that are firm but instructive. The story of King Lycaon, who tests Zeus by serving him a meal tainted with cruelty, is met with immediate and decisive consequence, emphasizing accountability and the importance of moral integrity. Similarly, Other myths demonstrate the ripple effect of actions, showing that choices, especially those that disregard ethical principles, have far-reaching consequences. In bedtime-style narration, these stories are softened with a reflective tone, presenting moral truths gently while maintaining narrative engagement. Zeus' moral lessons also extend to hospitality, respect for the natural world, and the maintenance of social and cosmic order. He rewards those who demonstrate kindness, humility, and virtue, whether gods or mortals, and acts to restore balance when transgression occurs. These stories illustrate that moral authority is active and engaged, promoting harmony while highlighting the consequences of imbalance. The gentle rhythm of these narratives allows listeners to absorb lessons without the intensity of admonition, creating a reflective and soothing experience. Ultimately, Zeus' symbolic authority in mythology is a meditation on balance, justice, and responsibility. His actions, whether in punishing, guiding, or mediating, provide subtle instruction on the ethical use of power and the consequences of choice. Through these narratives, listeners are invited to reflect on principles of fairness, foresight, and moral discernment, all while experiencing the calming cadence of myth. In this way, Zeus serves not only as a figure of awe and majesty, but also as a guide, a model of measured authority, and a source of reflection, illustrating the intricate interplay of power, morality, and responsibility in both divine and mortal spheres. In the quiet unfolding of these stories, one can sense the rhythm of ethical reflection, the gentle hum of cosmic balance, and the enduring presence of a God who embodies authority, wisdom, and moral guidance. The myths of Zeus offer both narrative delight and contemplative meditation, allowing the listener to drift into thoughtfulness, calm, and a deeper understanding of the principles that govern both mythology and life itself. Zeus' influence on human affairs is both subtle and profound, shaping destinies, guiding choices, and maintaining the balance between divine will and mortal free will. In Greek mythology, the lives of humans are inextricably intertwined with the actions and decisions of the gods, and Zeus stands at the center of this interplay. He is both observer and participant, sometimes intervening directly, other times allowing events to unfold, ensuring that the natural rhythms of fate and consequence remain intact. These stories offer a gentle reflection on the interplay of divine authority, human ambition, and the inevitability of destiny, creating a soothing narrative flow for the listener. One way Zeus exerts influence is through his guidance of heroes and mortals, subtly shaping circumstances to test, challenge, or reward. In the myths of Heracles, Perseus, and Jason, Zeus' interventions provide protection, insight, or tools necessary for success, yet the heroes must still rely on their own courage, intelligence, and perseverance. This balance highlights a central principle. Divine influence does not remove responsibility or effort, but rather amplifies the outcomes of human action when guided by virtue, wisdom, or courage. In the gentle cadence of bedtime storytelling, these narratives convey lessons about preparation, resilience, and the interplay of fate and free will. Zeus is also present in the moral oversight of humanity, ensuring that ethical principles are maintained and that hubris or cruelty meets appropriate consequence. Mortals who act without consideration for justice or respect toward the divine often find themselves facing trials, loss, or correction. Stories of Lycaon, Niobe, and other figures illustrate the consequences of overstepping bounds, emphasizing humility, reverence, and the acceptance of limitations. These narratives, while sometimes dramatic, are softened in reflective storytelling, allowing the audience to absorb the lessons without the intensity of fear, creating a gentle meditation on morality, choice, and cosmic order. The interaction between Zeus and Fate, or Moira, is another aspect of his influence. Fate in Greek mythology is a powerful force, sometimes independent of the gods, yet Zeus often works in harmony with it, guiding human action to fulfill destiny without fully overriding it. This delicate balance reflects a recurring theme, the coexistence of divine guidance and inevitable outcomes. Mortals experience both challenge and opportunity, and the subtle presence of Zeus ensures that events unfold in alignment with the larger cosmic order. The listener can imagine this interplay as a soft current beneath the surface of daily life, shaping the course of events with quiet but inexorable influence. Zeus' influence is also evident in the stories of human suffering and triumph. Wars, famines, and natural disasters in myth are often depicted as reflections of divine will or responses to human action. Yet even in these tales, Zeus' intervention provides opportunity for resilience, learning, and eventual restoration. Mortals are tested not only in strength, but in character, perseverance, and morality. In this way, the myths suggest that challenges are both natural and instructive, and that the presence of divine oversight, even when not directly visible, ensures balance and purpose. The calm rhythm of these stories encourages the listener to consider the quiet shaping of life by forces larger than themselves, fostering reflection and mindfulness. The myths often portray Zeus as a mediator of fortune, balancing blessings and trials to maintain equilibrium. He rewards virtue and punishes wrongdoing, not arbitrarily, but in ways that maintain the moral and social fabric of human life. The stories of the Trojan War, for instance, illustrate how Zeus influences events by guiding heroes, managing divine interventions, and ensuring that prophecies are fulfilled. These narratives convey a sense of order and inevitability, a reassurance that even amidst apparent chaos, there is a guiding hand ensuring balance and continuity. Zeus also impacts human society through laws, customs, and the social order. He is often associated with governance, oaths, and the enforcement of agreements, highlighting the interconnectedness of morality, law, and divine oversight. Temples, rituals, and prayers dedicated to Zeus provided humans with a tangible connection to his influence, reinforcing ethical principles and reminding mortals of the consequences of action. These practices create a rhythm of respect and contemplation, establishing both community cohesion and individual mindfulness. In the soothing tone of mythic storytelling, listeners are invited to envision these rituals, the soft murmur of prayers, and the calm presence of the divine guiding human life. Another dimension of Zeus' influence is the shaping of personal destiny. Myths reveal that he can inspire courage, provide protection, and create opportunities for growth, but always within the framework of free will and individual choice. Mortals are tested in their decision-making, morality, and persistence, with divine influence serving as guidance rather than coercion. This interplay between autonomy and oversight encourages reflection on personal responsibility, resilience, and the understanding that guidance and opportunity often coexist with challenge and consequence. The bedtime-style narration gently reinforces these ideas, allowing the listener to absorb lessons while drifting into a reflective state. Zeus' role in human affairs is further illuminated through the myths of love, desire, and lineage. Through both divine and mortal offspring, he affects the course of history, creating heroes, kings, and significant events that shape civilizations. Figures such as Heracles, Perseus, and Helen of Troy illustrate the far-reaching consequences of Zeus' interactions with humanity, both subtle and overt. In these narratives, the threads of personal action, divine guidance, and fate are interwoven, emphasizing the complexity and subtlety of influence. Listeners can imagine the quiet unfolding of these legacies, a tapestry shaped by choice, consequence, and divine oversight. Ultimately, Zeus' influence on human affairs and fate demonstrates a profound balance between power and subtlety, guidance and autonomy, consequence and opportunity. His presence is felt in the rhythm of events, the unfolding of challenges, and the growth of character and morality. The myths illustrate that even immense power can be exercised with patience, foresight, and ethical consideration, shaping outcomes without erasing the agency of those affected. In the calm cadence of bedtime storytelling, listeners are invited to contemplate the quiet but pervasive ways in which guidance, choice, and consequence interweave, creating a gentle meditation on the nature of influence, destiny, and human life. Through these stories, one can perceive Zeus not only as a god of thunder and authority, but as a subtle architect of human experience, whose influence resonates across the sweep of time and the course of mortal action. The gentle rhythm of myth encourages reflection, understanding, and a sense of connection to forces larger than oneself, fostering calm, introspection, and a deep appreciation for the intricate dance of fate and guidance in human life. Athena's wisdom, Apollo's foresight, and Artemis' independence sometimes lead to subtle disputes over influence, recognition, or interpretation of divine law. Dionysus' unpredictable nature introduces further complexity, as his actions challenge norms, provoke discussion, or create unforeseen consequences. In these stories, Zeus' role is often that of the stabilizer, guiding resolution while allowing individual personalities to express themselves. The myths suggest that conflict is not inherently destructive. It can reveal character, test judgment, and ultimately strengthen bonds when managed with insight and patience. Another dimension of divine conflict involves morality and justice. Zeus is often depicted as enforcing ethical principles, intervening when a god acts unjustly, or mediating disputes that threaten cosmic balance. These interventions are measured, reflecting both his authority and his understanding of the broader consequences of action. A god acting rashly may face subtle reprimand or direct confrontation, and the myths describe these moments with careful attention to cause and effect. Zeus' handling of such situations demonstrates that leadership is as much about foresight, discernment, and the careful calibration of response as it is about power alone. The myths also emphasize the role of reputation and honor in divine conflicts. Gods are conscious of their standing among peers, and slight slights or perceived injustices can provoke tension. Zeus, with his commanding presence and strategic insight, maintains both authority and respect by balancing firmness with fairness. He is capable of issuing warnings, negotiating resolutions, and occasionally demonstrating strength, always aware that the perception of authority can be as critical as authority itself. In listening to these stories, one can appreciate the subtle interplay of influence, pride, and diplomacy, a reflection of the timeless challenges of leadership and social balance. Sometimes, the conflicts among gods extend to the mortal realm, creating indirect consequences that affect kingdoms, heroes, and ordinary people. The myths illustrate moments when disagreements on Olympus ripple down to earth, influencing events, altering outcomes, or setting the stage for heroic trials. Zeus' interventions are therefore both protective and corrective, ensuring that mortal and divine actions remain aligned with the overarching balance of the cosmos. The stories convey a gentle lesson. Even in conflict, the guidance and oversight of a wise leader can prevent chaos and transform tension into constructive resolution. In some accounts, rivalry among the gods is depicted with humor or irony. Competitive challenges, clever tricks, or playful contests allow Zeus to assert his authority while maintaining the cohesion of Olympus. These lighter narratives contrast with moments of tension, offering balance and perspective, and providing the listener with both entertainment and reflection. In these stories, even conflict becomes a rhythm, a pattern of interaction that reinforces hierarchy, clarifies roles, and preserves harmony. The myths suggest that leadership involves both seriousness and levity, and that the skillful navigation of conflict is an art as well as a necessity. The narratives also explore Zeus' personal growth through these rivalries. He learns when to act decisively, when to wait, and when to rely on negotiation. These stories reveal the subtle wisdom required to maintain both power and relationships, highlighting patience, perception, and adaptability. Conflict becomes a medium through which he refines his understanding of authority, justice, and balance, illustrating that even supreme rulers benefit from reflection and careful observation. In the calm cadence of storytelling, these lessons are absorbed gently, like whispers of insight woven into myth. Ultimately, Zeus' conflicts and rivalries among the gods highlight the complexity of power, relationships, and responsibility. Olympus is a dynamic realm, not a static utopia, and the careful management of disputes ensures that order persists amidst individuality, ambition, and personality. The myths invite the listener to observe these interactions with curiosity and calm, reflecting on the ways that authority is exercised, challenged, and maintained. They reveal a world where even the most powerful beings must navigate nuance, adapt to circumstance, and balance competing interests with patience and foresight. In imagining these divine rivalries, one can picture Olympus as a living, breathing society. Clouds drifting past towering marble halls, the murmur of counsel and negotiation echoing through chambers, and subtle gestures, words, or glances shaping the outcomes of disputes. Zeus stands at the center, a figure of both power and perception, guiding resolution, maintaining balance, and ensuring that the intricate harmony of the pantheon endures. Conflict, in this context, is not chaotic but essential, a mechanism through which character, wisdom, and order are tested, refined, and reinforced. Thus, the myths of Zeus' conflicts and rivalries among the gods become gentle lessons in leadership, negotiation, and the careful management of relationships. They teach that even immense power requires subtlety, patience, and foresight, and that harmony is achieved not through suppression, but through understanding, mediation, and the skillful balancing of competing forces. In the calm, immersive rhythm of storytelling, these narratives unfold like a meditation on authority, responsibility, and the enduring complexities of life, divine and mortal alike. Zeus' role as a punisher is one of the most compelling aspects of his mythology, highlighting his authority, justice, and the careful balance between consequence and learning. In the myths, punishment is never arbitrary. It is a response to hubris, cruelty, or transgression, designed to restore order and teach enduring lessons. Whether directed at gods or mortals, these narratives reveal a measured hand guiding events, a rhythm of cause and effect that reinforces morality, responsibility, and the consequences of choices. In bedtime-style storytelling, the recounting of Zeus' actions is gentle and reflective, emphasizing wisdom and cosmic balance rather than fear or dread. One of the earliest and most illustrative stories involves Lycan, the king who sought to test Zeus' omniscience by serving him a meal tainted with human flesh. Zeus' response is immediate and decisive. Lycan is transformed into a wolf, a vivid yet symbolic punishment that restores moral order and signals the seriousness of impiety. The story unfolds as a lesson in humility and the recognition of limits, reminding both gods and mortals that arrogance and defiance have consequences. In the soft cadence of narrative, this tale is both cautionary and contemplative, allowing the listener to reflect on the nature of justice, integrity, and accountability. Another well-known myth involves Prometheus, who defied Zeus by giving fire to humanity. In response, Zeus enacts a carefully measured punishment. Prometheus is bound, and an eagle is sent to consume his liver daily, which regenerates each night. This punishment, while severe, carries layers of symbolism, emphasizing the gravity of disobedience, the persistence of responsibility, and the tension between rebellion and authority. The myth also highlights Zeus' role in maintaining cosmic balance, illustrating that even acts intended to benefit others must respect the boundaries of divine law. Told gently, this story conveys depth, reflection, and the enduring consequences of choices. Zeus' punishments are not confined to mortals alone. Gods who act in ways that disrupt order or challenge his authority also face consequences. Hera, Poseidon, and other deities sometimes find themselves navigating the repercussions of conflict or disobedience, with Zeus acting as both mediator and enforcer. These stories demonstrate that divine relationships are governed by principle as much as power, emphasizing that hierarchy, accountability, and balance are central to maintaining harmony on Olympus. In bedtime-style narration, these dynamics are presented with calm reflection, allowing listeners to absorb lessons without tension or fear, appreciating the subtle complexities of divine governance. Mortals also experience Zeus' lessons in more subtle ways, through trials, misfortune, or circumstance. The stories of Niobe, who boasted of superiority to the goddess Leto, illustrate the consequences of hubris. Zeus' response is measured and purposeful, teaching respect, humility, and acknowledgement of higher principles. Similarly, mortals who act with cruelty, deceit, or disrespect may encounter divine intervention through storms, misfortune, or the loss of prosperity. These narratives unfold as gentle reminders of the ethical dimensions of action, inviting contemplation rather than instilling fear, and emphasizing the rhythm of justice woven through human and divine experience. Zeus' punishments often carry symbolic meaning, reflecting lessons about morality, restraint, and responsibility. Transformation, exile, or the imposition of hardship in myth serves as both consequence and instruction, allowing the affected individual to experience the weight of their choices. For listeners, these stories become meditative, providing insight into the importance of foresight, humility, and adherence to principles that preserve balance and harmony. The gentle cadence of narration ensures that even dramatic events are absorbed with calm reflection, reinforcing lessons without disrupting the immersive, soothing rhythm of the storytelling. In some myths, Zeus' punishments are paired with opportunities for redemption or learning, highlighting his role not only as enforcer but also as teacher. Heroes and mortals who recognize errors, demonstrate courage, or act with humility may find favor restored, blessings returned, or guidance provided. This dual approach emphasizes the moral framework underlying mythology. Consequences exist, but so does the possibility of growth, understanding, and reconciliation. In the soft storytelling style, these narratives encourage reflection on accountability, resilience, and the possibility of positive transformation, creating a rhythm of narrative that is both instructive and comforting. The consequences Zeus imposes also extend to natural phenomena and human events, linking moral lessons to the broader world. Storms, floods, or famine may be interpreted in myth as reflections of divine will, responses to hubris, or reminders of ethical responsibility. These stories illustrate that human actions are interconnected with the world around them, and that reflection, mindfulness, and ethical behavior are essential for harmony. In calm narration, these lessons are presented with serenity, inviting the listener to consider the delicate balance between cause and effect, action and consequence, in both mortal and cosmic realms. Zeus' punishments frequently serve as narrative devices to reinforce broader moral and cultural values. Respect for hospitality, honesty, justice, and humility recur as themes across his stories. By enacting consequences for violations of these principles, Zeus embodies the idea that ethical behavior sustains both community and individual well-being. The myths, told in bedtime style, allow listeners to absorb these lessons naturally, as part of the flow of narrative, fostering gentle reflection on character, ethics, and the interplay between power and responsibility. Ultimately, Zeus' punishments and lessons for mortals and gods reveal a god who balances authority with wisdom, enforcement with instruction, and consequence with reflection. He is a figure whose power is not exercised arbitrarily, but with foresight, patience, and moral purpose. Through these stories, the listener gains insight into the principles that govern both the divine and human spheres, learning that justice is deliberate, responsibility is essential, and the rhythm of consequence can guide growth, understanding, and harmony. In the quiet unfolding of these myths, one can imagine Zeus' presence as both firm and gentle. The crack of a thunderbolt tempered by wisdom, the ripple of consequence softened by reflection, and the enduring lesson that actions, whether divine or mortal, carry weight. His role as punisher is inseparable from his role as teacher, offering a model of authority that is both principled and contemplative. In the immersive cadence of bedtime storytelling, these narratives become meditative, encouraging the listener to drift into thoughtfulness, calm, and a deeper understanding of justice, morality, and the intricate balance that defines the cosmos. Zeus, though rooted in ancient Greek mythology, has continued to resonate through centuries of culture, art, literature, and philosophy, leaving an enduring imprint that extends far beyond the myths themselves. His stories, actions, and symbolic presence have inspired countless adaptations, interpretations, and reflections, illustrating the timeless fascination with his authority, character, and moral significance. In the soft, calming cadence of bedtime-style storytelling, these cultural echoes of Zeus provide a bridge from ancient imagination to contemporary understanding, inviting listeners to drift gently through the layers of influence that stretch across history. In classical art and literature, Zeus has been portrayed as the ultimate embodiment of authority, wisdom, and power. Sculptures, paintings, and literary descriptions often emphasize his majestic presence, his thunderbolt, and his commanding posture, creating a visual and narrative language that conveys both awe and reflection. These representations allow audiences to connect with his stories in tangible ways, imagining the weight of his presence and the subtle lessons embedded within his myths. Over time, the interpretation of these symbols has expanded, but the core themes of balance, justice, and divine influence remain consistent, providing continuity and reassurance to listeners of all eras. The Renaissance period rekindled interest in Greek mythology, and Zeus, as the king of gods, became a popular subject for artistic and literary exploration. Painters and writers depicted his stories with dramatic flair, yet also imbued them with moral, philosophical, and allegorical meaning. The myths were interpreted as reflections on human nature, leadership, morality, and the ethical use of power, demonstrating that Zeus' influence was not only mythological, but intellectual and cultural. Bedtime-style storytelling today can draw on these interpretations, weaving calm reflections on human behavior and society alongside the familiar tales of the god, creating an immersive experience that balances narrative and contemplation. In modern literature and popular culture, Zeus continues to appear in novels, comics, films, and television series. Authors and creators often reinterpret his character, emphasizing different traits, authority, wisdom, temper, or romantic pursuit, depending on the narrative context. While some portray him humorously or critically, others highlight his role as a guide, protector, or symbol of moral order. These modern adaptations demonstrate the enduring flexibility and relevance of Zeus as a cultural figure, bridging the ancient and contemporary, the fantastical and the instructive. In the gentle cadence of storytelling, listeners can explore both the historical and modern resonance of the myths, appreciating how narratives evolve while maintaining essential truths. Philosophers and scholars have also engaged with Zeus mythology, analyzing his stories for insights into ethics, leadership, and human psychology. The myths are studied as reflections on the dynamics of power, the consequences of choice, and the moral frameworks that govern both gods and mortals. This analytical layer adds depth to the narrative, offering listeners an opportunity to contemplate not only the events themselves, but also the enduring human concerns that the myths illuminate. In bedtime-style narration, these reflections are woven softly into the story, creating a meditative rhythm that blends knowledge with imagination. Zeus' presence in cultural rituals and symbolism has persisted in forms both subtle and explicit. Temples, festivals, and symbolic references in architecture and literature have kept his influence alive, illustrating the human desire to connect with ideas of authority, justice, and cosmic balance. Even when interpreted metaphorically, Zeus represents principles that remain relevant: leadership, accountability, wisdom, and the ethical exercise of power. These enduring themes allow listeners to find continuity and meaning in the myths, fostering a calm and reflective engagement with both past and present. Modern storytelling often emphasizes Zeus' duality, his capacity for both generosity and retribution, his wisdom balanced by temper, and his influence interwoven with human action. By exploring these contrasts, narratives encourage reflection on the complexities of authority, morality, and consequence. Contemporary adaptations, whether in literature, cinema, or other media, invite audiences to connect with these lessons in a personal way, considering how the myths might mirror challenges, choices, and responsibilities in their own lives. The soothing cadence of bedtime-style storytelling allows these reflections to unfold gently, promoting contemplation without urgency. Zeus' symbolic presence in popular culture is also evident in references to power, leadership, and moral authority. Expressions such as the thunderbolt of Zeus or depictions of an all-seeing, guiding figure evoke his enduring influence. These symbols serve as shorthand for authority, justice, and divine oversight, illustrating how mythology continues to shape language, thought, and cultural imagination. Listeners can drift through these images, appreciating the gentle persistence of mythic themes across centuries and the ways in which stories continue to influence perception and reflection. In education and scholarly storytelling, Zeus myths are used to teach lessons about narrative structure, archetypes, and the interplay of human and divine agency. His stories provide insight into storytelling itself, illustrating the use of contrast, consequence, and moral reflection in shaping engaging and meaningful narratives. In bedtime-style storytelling, these lessons are embedded subtly, allowing the listener to absorb both the content and the structure of myth, fostering calm reflection and appreciation for the artistry of narrative. Ultimately, Zeus' role in later culture and modern interpretations highlights the timeless appeal of his character and the enduring relevance of his stories. From ancient temples to contemporary media, his presence embodies authority, justice, wisdom, and the complex interplay of power and consequence. The myths continue to teach, inspire, and provoke reflection, offering a bridge between past and present, human and divine. In the soft unfolding of narrative, listeners can trace the echoes of Zeus' influence, recognizing the enduring threads of story, symbolism, and moral insight that connect generations across time. Through these cultural reflections, the listener is invited to experience Zeus not merely as a figure of the past, but as a living presence in imagination, ethics, and narrative thought. The gentle rhythm of myth and storytelling provides a sense of continuity, connection, and calm, allowing one to drift through the layers of history, culture, and interpretation while absorbing the subtle lessons and reflections embedded in his enduring legacy. The legacy of Zeus stretches far beyond the myths themselves, reaching into every corner of art, literature, philosophy, and culture, creating a quiet but enduring presence that continues to inspire reflection and imagination. He is not merely a character of ancient stories. He represents principles, ideals, and questions that resonate through time. The balance of power, the exercise of authority, the subtle interplay between choice and consequence, and the moral frameworks that govern both human and divine realms. In the soft cadence of bedtime storytelling, his enduring presence unfolds gently, allowing listeners to drift through the reflections, insights, and wonder that the myths continue to inspire. Zeus' legacy is rooted in the lessons his stories convey. Through myths of heroes, mortals, and gods, he teaches about justice, wisdom, responsibility, and morality. His influence is felt in the consequences he administers, the guidance he provides, and the principles he embodies. Even when his actions are dramatic or morally complex, the underlying themes remain consistent. The importance of ethical behavior, the need for foresight, and the subtle rhythms of balance and order. In calm storytelling, these lessons are absorbed not through urgency or fear, but through gentle reflection, allowing listeners to consider how such principles might resonate in their own lives. The symbols of Zeus, his thunderbolt, eagle, scepter, and oak tree, continue to serve as metaphors for authority, vigilance, and endurance. Across centuries, artists, writers, and thinkers have drawn on these symbols to convey power, wisdom, and moral insight. Whether in classical sculpture, Renaissance painting, or modern literature, the imagery associated with Zeus remains evocative and instructive, connecting audiences with the rhythms of mythology in both subtle and striking ways. In bedtime-style narration, these symbols become gentle guides for reflection, encouraging contemplation on strength, responsibility, and the ethical use of influence. Zeus' impact is also evident in the continued exploration of his stories in literature, philosophy, and cultural discourse. Scholars analyze his myths for insights into human nature, governance, and morality, while storytellers adapt them for new audiences, reimagining his character in ways that reflect contemporary values and concerns. Through this ongoing reinterpretation, Zeus remains alive in cultural consciousness, a figure through whom people can explore questions of justice, leadership, desire, and consequence. The soft unfolding of these narratives allows listeners to appreciate the richness of the myths without haste, fostering calm engagement and reflection. Beyond narrative and symbolism, Zeus' legacy endures in the moral and philosophical reflections his myths encourage. They invite contemplation of balance, fairness, and the thoughtful exercise of power. Mortals and gods alike are shown to act within frameworks of consequence and ethical responsibility, illustrating the timeless importance of accountability, wisdom, and foresight. In bedtime-style storytelling, these reflections are presented gently, allowing the mind to wander through ethical landscapes, the rhythms of cause and effect, and the quiet lessons embedded in every story. The myths of Zeus also highlight the interconnectedness of life, fate, and human action. By shaping destinies, guiding heroes, and maintaining balance among gods, he demonstrates that influence is both subtle and pervasive. His actions remind listeners that choices carry weight, that guidance often exists alongside free will, and that consequences are integral to growth and understanding. These lessons, wrapped in the soothing cadence of narrative, encourage calm reflection, helping the audience to drift through story and thought in tandem, embracing both imagination and insight. Zeus' romantic, heroic, and punitive narratives further enrich his legacy, illustrating the multifaceted nature of authority and consequence. His interactions with mortals, gods, and heroes alike reveal the breadth of his influence, while the lessons embedded in these stories, humility, respect, courage, and accountability, resonate across time. In the quiet rhythm of bedtime storytelling, these tales offer both entertainment and meditation, allowing listeners to absorb the complexity of myth while remaining calm, reflective, and immersed in narrative flow. Cultural and modern reinterpretations continue to ensure that Zeus' presence is not confined to the past. From literature and cinema to philosophical discourse and educational storytelling, his character offers a lens through which to examine human nature, morality, and the dynamics of power. Each retelling preserves the essence of the myths while offering fresh insight, making Zeus both timeless and continually relevant. In this way, bedtime-style narration allows the listener to travel across centuries, exploring the enduring resonance of these stories while embracing the gentle rhythm of reflection. Ultimately, the legacy of Zeus is a testament to the enduring power of myth, narrative, and symbolic reflection. He embodies the ideals and challenges of authority, the necessity of balance, and the consequences of action. Through his stories, listeners are invited to explore ethical principles, human and divine psychology, and the intricate interplay between choice and destiny. In the soft cadence of storytelling, these reflections unfold gently, encouraging calm contemplation, meditation, and appreciation for the richness of mythology. As the myths draw to a close, one can imagine Zeus standing atop Mount Olympus, the thunderbolt at rest, the eagle circling high above, and the oak tree whispering gently in the breeze. His influence persists, not only in the stories we tell, but in the reflections they inspire, the principles they teach, and the imagination they ignite. In the quiet unfolding of these narratives, listeners drift into contemplation, embracing both the lessons and the calm, immersive experience of myth. The enduring legacy of Zeus is thus a gift across time, a tapestry of narrative, morality, and reflection, woven softly into the rhythm of imagination, thought, and dream. As our journey through the myths of Zeus comes to a close, it is time to pause, breathe, and reflect on the stories we have wandered through together. The tales of gods and mortals, of thunderbolts and eagle flights, of heroism and consequence, have all carried quiet lessons about authority, morality, balance, and the subtle rhythms of life. In the gentle cadence of storytelling, the narratives linger, inviting contemplation, introspection, and a sense of calm. Listeners can allow themselves to absorb the resonance of these myths, understanding that the power of story extends far beyond the words themselves, weaving threads of wisdom, reflection, and imagination. Closing reflections on Zeus remind us that mythology is not simply entertainment. It is a mirror of human nature, a guide through ethical landscapes, and a meditation on the interplay of choice and consequence. The god of thunder, storms, and justice embodies both the awe-inspiring and the instructive, demonstrating that power is most meaningful when tempered with wisdom, foresight, and fairness. As the stories of his actions, romantic encounters, punishments, and guidance settle softly in the mind, listeners are encouraged to carry the lessons gently with them. Lessons of humility, courage, moral discernment, and responsibility. In this reflective space, one can consider the quiet continuity of Zeus' presence across time. From the heights of Olympus to the pages of literature, the strokes of artists' brushes, and the narratives of modern media, his influence endures, shaping imagination and ethical understanding. Even as centuries pass, the essence of Zeus remains, a symbol of authority guided by principle, a reminder of balance in action, and a reflection on the consequences of both human and divine choices. The soft rhythm of bedtime storytelling allows these insights to unfold gradually, encouraging a gentle absorption of meaning without urgency or tension. The myths of Zeus also remind us that reflection is an ongoing process. Each story, each interaction, each consequence carries layers of insight that may be revisited with fresh understanding over time. By listening slowly and mindfully, we allow ourselves to engage not only with the narratives, but also with the ideas they embody. The responsibility inherent in power, the delicate balance of justice and mercy, and the quiet strength found in ethical action. These reflections create a serene mental space, a place where story, contemplation, and calm coexist harmoniously, preparing the mind for rest and gentle reflection. As we linger in this space, the imagery of Zeus, his thunderbolt resting, his eagle circling high above, the winds and clouds moving with measured grace, serves as a gentle metaphor for presence, influence, and guidance. These images encourage listeners to imagine balance, strength, and serenity, integrating the lessons of myth into a quiet awareness of the world and the self. The soft, immersive cadence of narrative helps to translate these ancient stories into personal reflection, creating a meditative rhythm that can accompany the mind toward calmness and relaxation. Even the most dramatic episodes of Zeus mythology, the punishments, the conflicts, the challenges of heroism, carry subtle messages when approached with gentle storytelling. They are narratives of consequence, not fear, lessons in ethical action, not anxiety, reminders of interconnection, not chaos. By presenting these stories with a soft, reflective tone, the listener is invited to consider the principles underlying myth without disturbance, allowing understanding, wisdom, and calm contemplation to emerge naturally. The enduring relevance of Zeus also reminds us of the power of imagination and narrative. Through myth, culture, and storytelling, we are able to explore complex ideas about morality, choice, and consequence in ways that are engaging, immersive, and reflective. The rhythms of these tales, the rise and fall of events, the interplay of action and reaction, the unfolding of heroism and consequence, invite a meditative attention that calms the mind, offering both entertainment and subtle guidance. In bedtime-style narration, this combination of insight and serenity becomes a tool for reflection and rest. In the quiet aftermath of the myths, it is comforting to acknowledge the gentle threads that connect past and present, gods and mortals, story and reflection. Zeus' presence in mythology continues to resonate because it speaks to universal experiences, the challenge of responsibility, the complexity of relationships, the weight of choice, and the enduring search for balance and justice. By engaging with these narratives in a calm, immersive way, listeners can internalize lessons softly, allowing reflection and imagination to coexist peacefully. Finally, as we draw the stories to their gentle conclusion, we are reminded that mythology is a gift of time and imagination, a space where moral reflection, wonder, and serenity meet. The tales of Zeus encourage mindfulness, ethical reflection, and a sense of connectedness to larger forces, whether divine, natural, or human. In this soft space of narrative, listeners are invited to rest, to breathe, and to carry the calm, contemplative energy of the stories into their own lives, embracing the quiet lessons and enduring resonance of myth. As our storytelling journey ends, let the image of Zeus, majestic, thoughtful, and watchful, linger softly in your mind. His thunderbolt is at rest, the eagle drifts high above, and the oak tree whispers in the wind, carrying the enduring rhythms of consequence, authority, and wisdom. In this final reflection, the listener is invited to drift into a gentle state of calm, integrating the stories, lessons, and subtle rhythms of mythology into a sense of quiet understanding. The myths do not vanish. They remain within the mind, ready to inspire thought, reflection, and imagination whenever revisited, providing both calm and insight. And so, with the gentle echo of Zeus' presence, the lessons of his actions, the wisdom of his guidance, and the quiet rhythm of his myths, we conclude this exploration. Listeners may now rest, carrying with them the soft reflections, gentle stories, and timeless lessons of the King of Gods, allowing imagination, contemplation, and serenity to merge as the mind drifts into quiet, peaceful rest.